Let's call the Finance Committee meeting to order. And just as a point of order for everyone, it's a Finance Committee, but we're welcoming the full City Council to the meeting tonight, and we'll ask that the full council members, all the council members can make comments, make motions, vote, and everything as we go through this, so that we don't have a duplication and have to run it back through again. We'll try it and see if that works. If it doesn't, then we'll revert back to our other method. The first thing we're going to do is have some presentations on budgets. We've allocated about an hour and a half on that. Then we'll call on the community groups, and then I think we'll take a break, and then we'll get into the rest of the budget. So, everybody okay with that? Okay. Then we'll just move right into the, well, I guess I should say, is there any public comment? Anyone here from the public that wants to speak to us? All right. Then we'll move right into the budget presentations, and we have the Housing and Redevelopment Authority, and that would be Jill and friends, but you didn't bring any friends. Okay, welcome, Jill.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, everyone. Nice to see everyone. I'm going to give you our report on 2013 and our request for our 2014 tax levy. And I'm going to start with an error I'm going to point out on page 8 at the top of the page. This is your 2014 budget we are presenting, not your 2013. And the very last column should say fiscal year 6/30/14 budget, not 6/30/13. Okay, so you're all familiar with our programs. I'll just kind of go through them real quickly on page 2. The projects owned by the HRA are Lakeview Apartments, Family Public Housing Scattered Site. All of that together we refer to as our HUD public housing units. A big project we have going on right now is we're doing a community needs assessment on all of our projects to determine the next 20-year capital improvements that are needed. The plan that was there is really outdated. It had been about 13 years since a community needs assessment had been done on the projects, and it's time to update that. Highland Apartments, earlier this year we were here to get your approval to apply for housing tax credits, and we did hear a week ago that we were funded. So in the next year that will be a project coming up. Country View Place is a 6-unit townhome project for supportive services for persons who are homeless. On page 3, other projects we manage for third parties: West Central Mental Health Housing, Dana Heights Apartments, and West Winds Townhomes. And no real big changes with those programs this year. Rental assistance programs, the Housing Choice Voucher Program. That program is part of HUD, which is sequestration is in law, so we anticipate funding for that program to continue to go down over the next 10 years, as is the law, unless the law changes. Bridges to Bridges, rental assistance, shelter plus care, all of those will be affected by that law. 2012 Small Cities Development Program, we were funded for 57 units to be assisted. We probably have about 20 projects in the works right now, and are hoping by the end of January to have all our households in place, and then just have to finish up with our contractors and have all that money appropriated by the end of June 2014. MHFA programs that we have: homeowner rehab loan program and the emergency and accessibility loan program. Rural development, the IRP program is for businesses in the downtown. And secure deposit loan program for persons needing assistance with that. That's a repayment agreement with the HRA. Other projects going on that you're probably aware of: we are still in the works of merging Candy HRA and Willmar HRA together, and by January we hope to have the staff all together under one umbrella, and then July 1st of 2014 to legally merge the two agencies together. So that was it in a quick nutshell.
Wow. Thank you, Joe. Questions? Councilmember Dockin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Could you go over again Did sequestration have an impact on our community, or did it not?
It does have an impact on our community. Between the Candy, Ohio County HRA Section 8 program and the Willmar HRA program, we're serving 60 fewer households than what we should be serving. And we're spending all of the money we get from HUD. They keep that baseline in place for us, but they're not funding us up to 327 households for the county and 50 for the city. We are under by about 60 households combined. But we are spending all the funds and all the reserve funds, any reserve funds we had. So that's why we can't put any other households on, because we are spending everything we get. We are also in 2014 looking at, well, we are going to reduce our payment standards, which means we will be paying less on a unit and tenants will be paying more. And by doing that, we've kind of did an evaluation of the market and where we thought we could be to still keep landlords in the program. And we'll probably gain about 8 households total out of it. But we're stretching the dollars.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions? I have a question on you're combining the two HRAs. Will there likely be savings involved in that?
Well, yes. There will not be as many administrative staff. You know, we had 2 executive directors on each side. Now we have 1. We had 2 fiscal managers for each side. We'll have 1, just, you know.
The reason I ask that is your budget year goes June to July 1. The levy that you'll be receiving will be January 1 through December 31. So if you see those savings sometime, because are you targeting like July 1st for the combination?
Yes, we are.
So will you have some excess monies then, because you'll be getting more levy than what you need if you've made some savings in administrative staff?
No, because in the future, that levy will all be in, those 2 levies will be combined. You know, I don't see I don't see the levy going down.
You don't? Okay, that's kind of what I was getting at.
I don't, because our federal funding is going down. So we're trying, well, you know, and that'll just be a decision in the future, you know,
Okay.
what will the boards want to approve, you know. We anticipate all of that to continue to go down, and is that, politically, is that what we want to do, is offset any of those costs in the future?
Okay, all right. Councilmember Christensen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to comment on your question, it'll create a lot more efficiencies there, and any value or decrease in costs will show up down the road. But you have to realize that Jill here is attending the county board monthly. She's going the city board monthly. And then what other counties are we?
McLeod.
McLeod County. So her time is just being scattered, and she's not able to, well, she's putting in a lot of hours to do her job. Should be a lot more efficient. And with staff out there, I mean, you got city staff and county staff in the same room using the same computers and the same copying machines. They'll all be under one payroll, and it'll be a lot more efficient out there.
And you're pretty sure it'll be July 1? You're on track for that? That's
Yes.
really good. That's been a major project, and the group is to be commended for making that work.
It's been a very cooperative, I mean, the combined merging committee of both boards, city and county, have worked really well together. So far it's gone real smooth.
Good. Anything else? Okay. Well, thank you, Jill. Now,
Talk
you
about
got to tell us, yes,
Okay.
what your levy is.
Okay, so our levy, on page 8 is our forecasted revenue and our pre-audit income as of 6/30/13. You can see the bottom line on page 9 where there was a loss and 6/30/13, and that's due to we sold all of our pilot houses that we had in inventory, and so that's what kind of makes up that loss there. For 6/30/13, we're projecting revenues of $919,193.81 and expenditures of $916,823.21. And our levy request for the year is $170,000.
197,904, is that,
No, our request is for 170.
okay. Mine doesn't say that, 170, okay. Okay, I think we'll do that when we do a lot of our motions at the end to include that in our levy, so. Anything else?
Thank you.
Okay,
Okay, thank you.
thanks, Jill. All right, let's go to the municipal utilities, Tim and Wes.
Good afternoon. I'm going to go through the presentation, and then as there are questions, you can, either myself or Wes, if there's some really technical engineering questions, Wes will handle them. The presentation is going to be the same as in your handout with one exception. There is a column in your handout that is 8 months, and we use that for our reforecasting. And just so we've got apples to apples, I've eliminated that in the presentation that we have here today. As you're aware, that we split our business into 3 different divisions: the electric, the water, and the heating. And I'm going to go through a slide on each of those and then come to a consolidated or a combined page. Next, I'm going to go through the capital budget for the power production, for the electric distribution, the water and heating division, and then we have a general and administrative area as well. And I will point out that our budget right now is in progress. Our commission saw this last week, and as we get through the combined, we'll make a comment about where we are and some of the initiatives that we're going to be working on. But to talk about 2014 very quickly, or I'll go through this as quickly as I can. 2012, we had $26.7 million in revenues. We're forecasting $26.7 million revenues for 2013. So we're basically flat for the year. We had projected an increase in load that didn't materialize, and then we had the loss of several commercial customers, including Willmar, which contributed to the decline that we saw in 2013. The assumption for 2014 is that we'll see about a 1% residential growth in load and a 1.5% growth in commercial load. So that's not a rate increase, it's a load growth, so more kilowatt hours. Looking at expenses, we're projecting $25.6 million for total expenses for 2014. And I just want to point out a couple things here. If you look at the 2013 budget to the 13 reforecast, you see a large decrease, and then it pops back up in 2014. This is a result of the overhaul that we did in the number 3 turbine and number 3 boiler during the year. We had budgeted for a 2-month outage, and because of various issues, it stretched to 5 months, so we had a very significant outage. And the expense savings were on the fuel side. As a result of not running, we're not buying and consuming the coal. And you can see that over here where we had a large decrease and basically then a large increase, offsetting it as we get back to normal operations. One of the other, and the biggest expense that we have is for purchase power. And these are the various contracts that are in place that we use to supply power to the city. We are projecting for next year $14.7 million, which is an increase of about $700,000 from last year, primarily coming from 2 different sources. One is the WIPI nuclear contract that we have. There is a price adjustment in that, and there's a stage price adjustment, and it is fairly significant in the first couple of years, and then it levels off. Over the term of the contract, it's only a 2.7% a year growth, but it has some steps in the early years. And that's contributing a lot to that increase. We're also seeing some increases in rates in the transmission through the MISO system. And that is the, the largest increase that we're seeing in our budget for next year. We're looking at net earnings before taxes of $1.4 million, which is about $800,000 lower than what we forecast from this year. And as you can see, we have at this point in our process, a negative retained earnings, but we can talk about that a little later as well. Next, I want to turn to our water division. Water makes up about 7% of our total revenues. So from that standpoint, there's not a lot here, but we'll go through it very quickly. Revenues next year are projected to be about little less than 2.1 million, and the overall assumptions are that we have seen a trending in conservation rates in water, and we see a continuation of that over the next couple of years. So we're assuming about a 2% a year reduction in load as a result of that. As a result of that conservation trend. The reason we don't see a 2% reduction here is some of those revenues that we charge on our water bills are fixed, so those won't change. Total expenses right around 1.8 million we expect this year, just right at budget. We expect next year to be 1.86. Some of the larger ones are because of depreciation. We finished the college water tower this year, so that's going to be receiving its first full year of depreciation. It's interesting to note that the operating numbers here, or the operating differences here, represent about $7,000. That's less than 1% increase year over year. So a fairly skinny budget and a fairly small increase going forward. The heating division represents about 3% of our revenues, about $1 million a year in revenues and about the same in costs. It's essentially a break-even type of business for us. We have currently only about 225 customers that participate in the heating division. 134 of those are residential, and the rest are commercial industrial. And we're basically looking at an increase in expenses right at the inflation rate of 1.2%. And as I mentioned, it's essentially a break-even position. This is the combined Willmar Municipal Utilities budget. We have 30 million is our 2014 budget revenues. Again, you can see, I'll lose my cursor here. Revenues from 2012 to 2013, again, are just essentially flat. Again, not seeing the load growth from our electric division. A couple of the assumptions that we have overall in the budget, we have no increase in positions. We're filling open positions, but we have no increase of staff. And at the present time, there is no labor rate increase. We're waiting for the results of the union negotiations to determine what that rate will be. One of the things that you'll notice, obviously, is at the 2014 level, a $381,000 loss. As a management team, we've been through the budget a number of times, and the commission has tasked us to go through it one more time with fresh eyes and renewed pursuit in looking for opportunities, and we'll be presenting those initiatives to the commission. A couple of things that we do have in the budget next year as well is a look at both the electric division and the water division as a cost of service. That's a study that looks at the allocation of costs to those various areas and that will include a competitive rate analysis of where the Willmar Municipal Utility stacks up with competing utilities as far as our rates are concerned. One other thing to point out on the combined is the intergovernmental transfer. Under the terms of the agreement that we have with the city, that will grow by 4% from 13 to 14. So our contribution for 2014 will be approximately $2,075,000, and that does not include the streetlight maintenance, but that would be the cash contribution that comes across quarterly. I'm going to go ahead and start and go through the capital part. The first area that I'm going to look at is the power production, and I want to point out in 2014, we have a number of projects that we are considering subject to what we call a local generation resource study, meaning we have an analysis that we need to do about the local resources that we have here, and as a result, we won't spend the money until that resource study is done and the commission has approved it. That includes this first project, which is the coal runoff, the diesel generator relocation, as well as the cooling tower rebuild. Those are basically placeholders at this point, and they won't be funded until that local generation resource study is complete. That study was identified as one of the key strategic issues for us to address as a part of our planning this year. One of the other things is this preamp substation right here, which is essentially a economical backup for our other substation, and we expect the funding for that in 2014 to be quite considerably less than that, so we'll be reallocating this. It's probably going to be more like $500,000 in 2014, and that'll get pushed into the following years. So this will look fairly different when we finalize it, and as then we approach the financing of it. One thing I will point out is our priority scale that we use. If you're familiar with it, we use a 1, 2, 3. Priority ones are projects that must be done, and those are safety or revenue-enhancing projects. Priority twos are projects that should be done if the funding is available, and priority threes are projects that could be done if funding is available. So the priority one projects are those projects that we must do. And all of these projects in the power production are in the second category. I appreciate this is a little harder to read. This is the electric generation, or excuse me, electric distribution. This is a lot of the new services, both residential and commercial, are in here. A lot of the programs to continue to replace the overhead wires and put them underground is in here. I won't go through each of those individually. Our priority one projects are about $800,000, and the single largest one is at item 15, which is an underground feeder and distribution that's south of the Highway 2371 bypass, and that's for our connection or our taking over that section from Candio High Power Cooperative in 2015. So that's something that we have to do as a part of that agreement to take over those commercial customers out there. And that in itself is the biggest capital project we have in the electric distribution. One other thing to point out is at item number 6, the underground conversion projects. 2014 is projected to be the final year of that years-long process of taking all the overhead wires and putting them underground. And as a result of that, you'll see a tremendous drop-off in the funding going in there. A lot of these then are just repairs or new underground services as they're needed. I think I won't say anything more on that one. Water and heating. Total capital of $400,000, $440,000 for 2014. Couple of comments here at Item number 3, the water plant life extension. This is an improvement to the water plant, and we're basically waiting for the MPCA to respond to the city letter. And we will be, so that's kind of in a holding pattern. We won't be spending any money on that until we receive that response from the MPCA and work that out with the city. A lot of these, again, these capital items are ongoing that happen every year. The meters, the water mains, the well life extension. We do a rehab of one well every year, and so this is kind of an ongoing program. This last item, the college water tower life extension, this basically shows the funding of the long-term contract that we have with the vendor that did the work. And as you see, when that funding is done, we will then flip up and do the extension for the Willmar water tower. So a fairly modest budget for capital for water and heating. Our G&A and meter. To go through these, computer hardware, software, office furniture and equipment, load share, receiver installations. These are pretty normal annual programs that we have going on. We do in the 2016 in computer hardware. This is a placeholder for a potential replacement of the telephone system here at the utilities. It's extremely old and may need updates as we embrace other technologies. We need to bring that technology along as well in order to merge it with the other systems we're bringing on board. We have a placeholder for an office garage headquarters construction that obviously is dependent upon a number of factors. Number 6 is a replacement of or an improvement to the current automatic meter reading, and we would be going to what is called an AMI system, which is meter information infrastructure. That basically will be the $50,000 in 2014 is developing the business case for why we would invest in that. Number 8 here is the computer conversion project that we are undertaking at present. We had bids due back from vendors last Friday, and I'm pleased to report that our bids came in considerably under these numbers here. So some of the lower ones were about half of this, and even the highest ones didn't get up to the threshold we have here. So we're pleased with the bids. We've got a very strong a pool of potential vendors, and we'll come out of there with a good product. This kind of ties all the capital together, and again, it's a work in progress. 8.1 million is the 2014 capital, and like I said, we expect some of that to be pushed back out, or a significant amount of it is on hold pending that generation resource study. Then as we will look at how we will source it, how we will fund that capital, the priority 1 projects, and this number will change a little bit, but that 1.6 million will basically be funded out of cash flow. And as we look at the other projects and how they stack up, it'll be a combination of reserves or cash flow. We don't expect that there will be any significant financing required in 2014. Wes would be happy to answer any questions.
Okay. Questions from the council? No one? Councilmember Christensen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You just jotted a few things down here. One item on here was a water vehicle. What's a water vehicle?
That's a vehicle for the water department, basically a pickup. Yep.
I should have figured it out. Who knows? Utilities in the water. I notice you have annually your vehicle replacement, and as with the Public Works in Willmar, I suggested a while ago, keeping these vehicles longer, we don't leave the city. I mean, they're not driving hundreds of miles away from here every day. Even your meter reading vehicle, I see you got replacement for a couple of them down the road here. And why couldn't we keep these vehicles a lot longer and then, you know, drive them 150, 200,000 miles? They're only in the city. You know, we're not going to the Twin Cities and back with them. And I don't know why we need to have new ones all the time. Is there some logic to that?
Yes, I could help you out on that. Number one, we'll thank Tim for doing this. He's been on board for a little over a year, and I think he's got a pretty good handle of what we're doing here. In fact, a very good handle. He's done a fine job. As far as vehicles, we had a 10-year replacement program that we instituted in the late 90s, and we basically ignored that program recently, where the vehicles being replaced right now are 13-plus years old, and it's not the miles but the hours that kills these things. If they're going 2-3 blocks, stopping and starting, we've replaced brakes often. They don't have high miles. They just don't have that opportunity. We've got to the point where some of them have transmissions that are getting to be undependable and even dangerous, and so those are the ones that get up to the replacement part, as opposed to miles. Miles is just not the metric that we have to look at for those particular replacements. Otherwise, you know, if they are smoking, we try to do something to keep the smoke down, but these units have been well used, and we've gotten our money out of each one of them. We don't take those vehicle replacements lightly.
Another question, you said there's no labor increase included in here because negotiations are in progress. What is there any anticipated amount, or do we know where we're going with this? I mean, is it a huge amount we're talking about?
Well, I think historically, it's always, the rate increase has been the same as the union contract. And as a general guideline, given our total labor budget, a 1% increase would be about $35,000.
Okay. Then are we looking at any more rate studies coming down the road here? I mean, people ask me constantly about, you know, utility rates. I mean, in the last 4 years, they've been boosted along with our water and sewer. And it's a major concern for homeowners in town and businesses. That's thus the water conservation that you're seeing and less water being sold. But the bad part of this is it's just a cycle. You use less water, it costs you more money. You know, you use less electricity, it costs you more money. And yet we're still being told conserve, conserve, conserve. Is there any way around that? I mean, I know you have the same amount of people running the water department, no matter if we use 100 gallons or 200 gallons. But is there anything that can be done, I guess, labor-wise? You said there is no increase in people or employees. People ask me this all the time, so I'm asking you.
I think one of the things that I see is a need to have a good overall strategic technology plan for all the businesses. And I think that there are probably opportunities in that technology for some efficiencies that might dampen the potential increases going forward. But having said that, we do have money in the budgets this year to take a look at that, doing a cost of service study for both the water as well as the electric, just to make sure we're matching where our costs are coming from to where those revenues are coming from as well.
Okay. I forgot to mention, thank you. I mean, that's an excellent report and a review of your budget for the coming years. Appreciate it.
Councilmember Nelson.
Yes. I just wondered if you had any comments on the flattening of the revenue or how the growth of Willmar could help to offset costs, if you had any comments?
Well, definitely, if you sell more, you'll be able to have a difference in your bottom line. And we're hoping that as a result of the commercial activity that's happened this year, that we're going to be closer to our projection of a 1.5% increase in sales. And that has a big impact on our bottom line. If it exceeds our estimates, then our bottom line obviously will look a little bit better. Each 0.5% or each percent equals, a significant amount of money.
So if we saw tremendous growth in our community, would the rates go down?
That's a good question. We'd have to analyze that.
I have just kind of a comment. I remember, I don't know if it was 2 or 3 years ago, last time we did a rate increase. It was substantial, and I think the word that the council gave the utilities was maybe we should be looking at a series of little increases, so all of a sudden we're not faced with a 10%. And I believe that was the word from the council, so just kind of take that into consideration. I mean, you're saying nothing for 14 probably. That's excellent, but.
I don't think I said that. I said we're doing the study.
All right. Okay.
Councilmember Anderson, yes, we had 2 7% increases in 2012, and that was as a result of waiting way too long, and it was a shock to all of our customers, and it was not something that we wanted to go through at the time. And when we did look at that, we said we need to take a much closer look more often, so if there is any adjustments required, we don't wait too long, and any incremental increase would be a whole lot smaller, so the impact would be less. And that's what we're trying to do here is we see the trend. If you look at our budget for 2013 at a 2% return on the electric, that said that we were not anticipating a whole lot of return at that time, so that was almost a warning sign right there. And so in 2014, with this cost of service study, which will be tied to rates and taking a look at what our rates, if they're enough to recover what our costs are, we think that there might be some adjustment in 2014, but we need to take a look at those numbers. And remember, the hardest thing for us to control is the biggest piece of our budget, which is the power purchase. You can fire half of the people in our organization, but it won't come anywhere close to what it costs us for our power purchase. That's the biggest piece on the whole thing. That is, and we have the least amount of control over that piece. We are now in negotiations and working on future power supplies. We're trying to keep a portfolio approach going on our power supplies so we don't have any great risk in any one source. The negotiations are ongoing, and we hope to have some really good results within a year or so. And that's when we'll start seeing, hopefully, some motion on this. And, that's where we really should put a lot of our effort, because that is the biggest piece in our budget.
Yep. Rick, Councilmember Fagerly.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thanks, Wes and Tim, for coming. That Priam substation, that's our own substation, and there's no cost share with the co-op, REA, or with Excel.
Well, as a matter of fact, we are working with Great River Energy, who is the parent of the local co-op, and it's a transmission enhancement for reliability. And both Great River and Willmar Utilities are working together to negotiate some sort of sharing on that, whether they take one piece, which would be the transmission, or the substation piece. And what that, I don't know if you remember when we got involved in the transmission organization, CapEx 2020, a few years ago, and it have a similar treatment in the MISO market as that. So being part of the MISO market, we anticipate that that will also provide some sort of return in the transmission system. So it won't be a full 100% cost, but there'll be some sort of return on that.
Okay. And then one other question. Do you have your own mechanic to repair your vehicles, or do you farm them out?
We do not, no. And most of the activity with our automobiles is basically changing oil, making sure we got the maintenance and all that stuff. When we do have mechanical problems, we do bring it to a mechanic. And it, by doing that, it saves us having a full-time person that really would not be busy doing that full-time.
Because I know the city of Willmar has their own mechanics. The CAT system used to bring their buses there to have oil changes and repairs done until they hired their own. So maybe that's something you could look into.
And I think we did that quite a few years ago, but we haven't gone back to that. I wasn't involved in those decisions back then, but it's something that could be looked at.
Okay, thanks.
Councilmember Dockin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you both for coming and for the good report. Can you talk a little bit about the wind turbines in 14? What is the reliability factor on them now? I know we have an outstanding amount of, what, $250,000? Have they repaid us that amount? Or could you just in general terms talk about what kind of an impact the turbines may or may not have in 14?
Going through 14, which will be the final year, full year of our warranty with our vendors, we're preparing for end-of-warranty activities, which include an end-of-warranty inspection. We're also looking at people to work on those units, to replace the existing technicians. And we're also working on getting a better rapport with the company so we can get a response, an actual response from them on our $250,000 request for performance. Our anticipation is the hope that we have as much performance as we did in 2012. We didn't talk much about the wind turbines in 2012 because their performance was well over 90%. I'd like to get back to that point again.
And then thanks for staying on top of it personally. I appreciate what you and the rest of the MUC does with respect. I know you catch a lot of flack, but you do take it seriously, and I appreciate that.
We have a very good team. Thank you very much.
Councilmember Ahman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thanks for being here again. One question I had, you mentioned talking about acquisition or compensation or trains of electrical consumption areas with the RE. And where is that?
Councilmember Ahman, could you?
Oh, my mic isn't here. Is that better?
Yeah, thank you.
There was, I heard some discussion on purchasing of power through acquisition through the boundary areas between the REA. Is that the County Power Association? Where is that shown in the budgets? I know there's usually a payoff or a payback on that. Is that under what item?
In a few years ago, after the city had annexed that territory, the co-op board and the municipal utilities board got together to negotiate a controlled territory acquisition agreement. And part of that agreement was that after the city has annexed a territory that is part of the co-op would enjoy the revenue of that annexed territory and any growth into that according to a contract. And once that time period has expired, then the Willmar Utilities would take that over. And so the goal behind that was to reduce or eliminate a transfer of actual cash funds. And it also reduced or eliminated quite a few lawyer fees. So in the long run, it was better for them and for us on our cost basis, and we both can agree on how that goes. But what happens is that the Willmar Utilities doesn't immediately take over a territory once the city of Willmar annexes the territory.
Okay.
But we'll start seeing revenues from that
In the future.
in 2015.
Okay. Thank you.
Councilmember DeBleek.
Yeah, thank you, Councilman Anderson. Wes, on streetlight replacements and the types of streetlights you're putting out there, are we going more to the LED streetlights? Are you going to be implementing more of those? And has the cost factor, the cost payback on them starting to equalize the high-pressure sodium?
That's a good question, Councilmember DeBleek. We are and have been looking at the LED streetlight technologies for the last 4 or 5 years, and there was initial excitement about the new LED technologies, and the vendors were out there pushing these on a regular basis. We actually did install a few of them on a test basis and compared them in a row. We chose some of those that had the best lighting capabilities because they were all about the same cost. And when we went back to the vendor and asked them if we could purchase a large quantity of those, they stopped making that model. And that told us that they're not ready for prime time yet, and we're keeping abreast with the developments, but it got to the point where the model of each one of these units would change so rapidly that it showed us they didn't have confidence in their models yet. So once those things start settling out, we plan on getting a lot more into the LED technology.
Okay, just for information's sake, we're going to take this for information, and when they finalize their budget, we'll see it come through in their minutes, and it will be approved that way. So, thank you, gentlemen. I appreciate it. We appreciate it. You know, I want to back up a minute. I see Jill is still here, and I don't see a reason to have her, unless she wants to stay until 7 o'clock tonight, before we might vote on that. I think it might be appropriate if we get a motion and approve their requested $170,000 levy amount.
I'll make that motion.
There's a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Now, remember, we're all voting on this, so. Okay, hearing none. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes. Thank you, Jill. Okay, now we'll get back to the agenda, and we'll go to Rice Hospital, and looks like we have Mr. Schramm and Mr. Fensky. Welcome, gentlemen.
Good afternoon. Feel like I was just here. I'm going to make some opening comments about what's before you in our budget, and talk a little about some things we've experienced and things we're looking at for this next year. And then I'm going to have Bill Fensky, our Chief Financial Officer, kind of walk you through what's in the packet, the overview of all of what comes with the packet. But the first thing that I would say is that at the top of the first page, we refer to under subject, it says 2014 forecast, and in parens budget. And we've gone to a little bit different methodology this year with how we're looking at budgets, and in particular forecasting, and really move to what we refer to as more as forecasting, not necessarily budgeting down to the department level. It doesn't look much different at the board level or to the council as it's laid out, because it still is a forecast for this next year. But we did, from a methodology standpoint, make some changes to how we went about forecasting for this next year. But as you look at this, I'll just speak to kind of some trends, some things that we've experienced, and but also start with some things that we've done over the past number of years and really focused on with the board. And that's some things, some detail that Bill will speak a little bit more in detail to in pages 1 and 2. But we spent a lot of time with the board referring to and talking about ratios and various statistics that really are what board should be looking at versus the numbers per se on the P&L or on the balance sheet, dollars and that type of thing. It's ratios that we really spend a lot of time focusing on. And so whether it's operations, operating margins, things like EBITDA ratios, which is earnings before interest and depreciation, there are certain key ratios that we look at that really speak to both operationally as well as our balance sheet, how healthy we are from a financial standpoint. And a big part of what we've worked to manage over the past number of years is the balance sheet. And 5, 6, 7 years ago, from a standpoint of cash and liquidity on our balance sheet, we've made significant progress over the past number of years to improve our days of cash on hand, as well as the ability or the wherewithal to manage our debt. And so as you look at ratios like days of cash on hand, as well as debt to capitalization, that's another ratio that speaks to how leveraged we are as an organization. And about 5 years ago or so, we were over 50% debt to capitalization. That's now down in the neighborhood of 43 and 44%. So that's a big improvement. We've worked hard to manage our balance sheet as we've worked hard operationally to make changes to our operation to get to where we are today. And as we talk a lot with the board and the finance committee about, we're in a capital-intensive industry, and so capital projects, capital equipment, those types of things are always things that we're planning for, that we're looking at, but we're also looking to manage those in a way that's prudent as we look at how we manage our operation and our resources. So Bill's going to walk you through the documents, everything that you see before you, but pages 1 and 2 and a lot of those ratios are what we spend a lot of time with the board talking about. Current from a trend standpoint, trends that we've experienced that continue to put pressure on us from an operations standpoint deal with, first of all, volume. We're seeing certainly volumes be flat, and as we're talking about our projections and our forecast for 2014, generally speaking, across the board, volumes are flat, not a lot of increases in volumes. That's what we've experienced. And over the past number of years, you've heard us talk about there's been a shift from inpatient to outpatient as far as total proportion of our revenue of our business, patients, and how we're taking care of them. And we've seen that inpatient decline over the past number of years. And we're looking at ways that we can be more efficient as an organization to really kind of right-size ourselves moving forward as we're doing master facility planning, looking at where and how we're taking care of patients. But we've seen that decline over the past number of years. This year we've seen inpatient volume kind of stabilize, kind of plateau, and if anything, maybe a little bit of an uptick from an inpatient standpoint. We've seen outpatient volumes decline, however, and there's a variety of reasons for that, but just from a volume standpoint, our trends certainly have been that volumes have been flat in most areas. Along with that, we've seen a shift in our payer mix. And when I say our payer mix, if we break out our total revenue and by percentages, how much comes from government sources, meaning Medicare, Minnesota Care, Medicaid, state programs, all lumped into a bucket, and then commercial payers in another bucket. The gap has widened some, and we've seen a shift in our payer mix, meaning more to government sources and less to commercial, which is, from a financial standpoint, it's not a good thing. That puts pressure on our P&L. So we've seen those kinds of trends that we've certainly experienced over the past couple of years. The payer mix we've seen even more this past year. And so we've built some assumptions into our forecast this year that look at that continued trend of flat volume, our payer mix continuing with the trend that we've experienced in the past few years. We've made changes this year, and certainly as I've heard some other themes with the utilities in other areas, but we've seen flat volumes. Sequestration also impacted us. We saw a 2% reduction in reimbursement across the board in and outpatient. So we've had to deal with those kinds of changes that have taken place over the last 12 to 24 months. We have made changes and have worked to reduce costs. We have made changes, have had a 2% cost reduction plan across the organization where we've had, across departments, we've asked for directors to make changes to reduce and find savings in costs, not savings from budget, but savings and true savings in costs. That we set a target of $1.6 million, and over the course of the balance of 2013 and into 2014, we actually have hit our target and well above our target. So we've done a lot of good work in that. We'll achieve some of those savings in 2013, several $100,000, but the bulk of it, or the lion's share of it, really kicks in 2014. Those are the kinds of things that we have built into our plan for this next year. As we also talk about balance sheet and operations and costs, as we look at the trends and things that we're dealing with, flat volumes, payer mix with where it is, and deterioration of payer mix, we're really focused on the cost side of our operation. And we're going to continue to need to be focused on the cost side of the equation. And as we talk about how productive we are, we're looking at things like, on page 2, there's productivity measures, which are FTEs per adjusted admit, which really refers to productivity in just the hospital setting. This year, we have built into our hospital budget, just the hospital, we're reducing FTEs by 15. And so that's part of what is going to be incorporated into our plan. And we're, again, looking at not just FTEs, but we've been doing a lot of work across the board with our organization to find ways to reduce costs in varieties of ways. Things that we can do with the hospital, but also in past years. And this past year, one example that we've done to look at ways that we can improve services, improve value, but work together with our medical staff and our clinics would be things like joint ventures for providing anesthesia services, for instance, with ACMC. Ways that we can work more collaboratively together to reduce costs and improve value and quality across our healthcare community. So there's a lot of things that are going into this year's forecast. We had to work to push to get to what's in our forecast, which operationally is a 2% margin. And Bill can speak more a little bit to that detail that comes with it. So we've spent a lot of time on this, and we'll just have Bill step up and share a little bit from an overview standpoint of the documents, the things that you're looking at, and then we can answer questions at the end.
Okay, thank you, Mike. So what I'd like to do is to go through the document that you should have a copy of in front of you. On the very first page, in the middle of it, we talk about the 2014 forecast and then all the various related documents that we have put in here, and we're going to go through those as a means of making sure we understand what those documents are, and then I'll highlight a couple of key pieces of information on those documents. On the bottom of page 1 is a summary of some of our key indicators related to the operation. What I'd like to do is these are consistent in format over the next 2 pages. And so on there you see the key indicator on the left side, and then going across the page on the column it says 9/30/2013. That's where we're currently at for our year-to-date performance. 2014 5-year plan, that's what we had projected based on the summer of 2012 when we did our 5-year financial plan, where we would be at in 2014. The 2014 forecast is what's actually we are projecting now based on updated information. And then the benchmark is where do we compare against other hospitals similar to Rice across the country. So you can see in our operating margin, right now we're at a deficit of 2.2% related to a couple of factors that are more one-time factors. But then as we look forward into 2014, we're projecting and getting that behind us, getting on track and getting to a 2% operating margin for next year. Turning the page to page 2, we look at our financial key indicators. Mike had talked about those. These are really the balance sheet indicators. They're there for you to review. Hopefully you've had a chance to look at those. But these are ratios that were pretty much in line with where the industry's at and then where we had thought we were going to be at. A couple of them are a little bit lower than we thought. Some of them are a little bit better than we thought. But overall, we're really generally in a reasonable point to where we thought we were going to be and to where the benchmarks are. And then on the bottom of page 2, we get into some of the productivity indicators. One indicator that I'd like to put attention to that I think we're most pleased with, if you look down on this page here, it's about 3-4 lines down. It's called controllable expense per adjusted admit. These are pretty much all of the expenses with the exception of interest, depreciation, bad debts, and taxes that we pay. So these are really the controllable expenses, salaries, wages, supplies, purchase services. And then we put those on a volume-adjusted basis. And what's key and what I think we're important here is for 2013, that number is $8,114. Next year, we're projecting that to decrease to $7,922. That is really kind of telling us what Mike had just shared is we're working very hard on our cost structure to try to push down our costs because there aren't any new dollars coming in. And so the only thing we can do is keep pushing down and trying to take cost out of the system. This is an indicator that helps us measure that ratio. On page 3 is just pages 3 and the top of page 4 is just the narrative for how we developed our process, what process we go through to create these numbers internally. Pretty much is very similar to what we've done in the past, so this should be fairly familiar to you from past years that we reviewed this. So then starting on pages 5 and 6, we get into the statistical volumes related to all the various departments. Those departments are shown on the left-hand side of the page. And then across, going back to 2005, we show what all of the statistics are over time for all of the major revenue-producing departments. Nothing in particular different than what Mike has shared. We are expecting a slight uptick in our inpatient days. The reason that we're projecting that is because that's what we've been seeing in 2013. We kind of went down. First quarter of 2013, we were low, but each month thereafter, we've been a little bit higher in our inpatient days. And so we're projecting that to continue at a very modest 1% rate. And then going down to all the other departments, and you can see all the ancillary departments, most of those departments are flat or they're a slight decrease based on what our current trends and what our current volumes and activities that are for this year and how it compares to prior years. So that takes care of pages 5 and 6 on the forecasted statistics and volumes. On page 7 is the consolidated balance sheet. This is a very busy page. There's a lot of numbers on this page. That is here as a means of generating the ratios. So for those of you who are financially oriented or interested, you can go in and you can recalculate the ratios and see where we get some of these numbers as far as what our days in accounts receivable are, days of cash, debt to capitalization. All of that is based off of this page, page 7, the consolidated balance sheet. On page 8 is the income statement for Rice Memorial Hospital. This is a consolidated income statement. There's a couple of lines that I want to share with you. The first one is in the middle here, kind of, and it's called total operating revenue. It's this line right here. And you can see the number for 2014 is $98,391,000, a very modest change from where we're currently at. That factors in our projected 3% rate increase. It factors in our changing payer mix, and it factors in any of the other operating revenues that we may have related to other services that are non-direct patient related. And so you can see that the actual amount of additional revenue is very small for us next year. So what does that mean? Well, that means we have to really push down on our expenses. And what I'd like you to look down is about the fourth line from the bottom. It'll say net operating expenses, this line right here. And that you can see that number is projected to be $96.3 million for next year, which is just about a $2 million decrease from where we're at now. It's critical that we continue to take cost out of the system. Mike talked about the FTEs that we're looking at taking out of the system. We're talking about purchase services that we purchase from outside vendors, outside organizations, trying to decrease those, decreasing some of our other discretionary expenses. A lot of those expenses that we call controllable expenses, taking costs out of the system as well. It's the only way that we're going to get ourselves back to a profitable level is we have to keep pulling cost out of the system. So when you factor in our total net revenues against our net expenses, we are projecting about a $2 million operating margin for next year. Our non-operating revenue, that is really our interest income that we receive on our cash and investments. Some of those are invested through the city with our reserve funds. Some of those are invested externally that we handle. All of those are in banks or government agencies and other approved investments according to the investment policy. On page 9, there's a lot of percentages on this page. This is just really more of an analytical page to see how do things look as a percent of operating revenues. And then on the right side is what is the change, the year-to-year change for all of the different line items. I'm not going to go through any of those. Of course, if you have questions, we will take those questions. On page 10, then, is our cash flow statement. It's important here to understand what our cash and investments are going to do in any given year and how they change from one year to the next. The first column is what we're projecting our year-end numbers to be for December 31st, 2013. And then we project forward to what next year is going to be based on our projected activity for 2014. One thing I want you to note is on line 4 is the debt proceeds. That's what Mike talked about last night at the council meeting. The 2013 borrowing of $6.2 million, and then the 2014 borrowing of $2.8 million in essence, to help fund many of our capital expenditure projects that we've already incurred or that we're going to incur next year. On pages 11 and 12 are key indicators. The significant indicators that we look at are already summarized up on pages 1 and 2. So I'm not going to go through any of these indicators here unless, of course, you have any questions on them. But the major ones are summarized up in the narrative on pages 1 and 2. And then the last page, which is page 13, is our 5-year capital plan. And I would have you look at the column of 2014. And based on the different types of expenditures we're going to have, routine expenditures, these are routine capital equipment, diagnostic equipment, medical equipment that we purchase throughout the organization, about $2.7 million. Minor projects, this is some renovations, some remodeling. It could be wall covering, could be floor covering, all sorts of various project construction type items for about $1 million. You see a line on here, hospital space planning projects. You probably saw in the paper we are working on some space planning. That is ready to be hopefully go to the hospital board in the next couple months. We're anticipating that the board will approve that plan, and so we have put some of these dollars in for 2014 and out through 2017. The next line item is a care center expansion and renovation. In 2013 is $2.6 million. 2014 is $5.5 million. All of those, excuse me, all of those projects have either been completed or have just started and will be completed in 2014. That is substantially renovating the existing care center, or what we used to call the old care center. We have half of that done. We're getting the other half done now. And then that 7-bed addition to therapy suites is also part of that. And then the last item here is the home medical projects and routine. This relates to some of the store renovations that we've done. Next year, we're projecting $1.1 million of routine expenditures at home medical, as well as some the renovation at our Alexandria store. What I'd like to call your attention to is the far right column of this worksheet, 5-year totals. So back in 2012, which is the line that says 5-year financial plan projections, 2012 approval. We had projected that we would spend from 2013 through 2017 $51.2 million. Because of everything that we know about now, what's going on in the healthcare industry, we have reduced that by about $6 million, and now our 5-year projection is down to $45.4 million. That's kind of part of what the concept of this plan, our approach is, that as we continue to move forward, we're constantly revising our numbers in order to adapt and adjust to what's going on out in the marketplace. And so those are all the pages of the 2014 forecast, and Mike and I would entertain any questions anybody may have.
Thank you for that excellent report. Questions from the council? No one? Councilmember Christensen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a comment, not even a question. You know, as little as I know about the hospital and running it, you two evidently are doing a really good job. I mean, it appears through some of the turmoil we've been and then projecting forward, at least 2014 looks positive. And thanks for your report.
Councilmember Johnson.
Yeah, thank you, gentlemen. My question would be, you indicated, Mike, that the government payment side is getting more challenging all the time. I'm just wondering if you've got any insight or what your forecasts are with the changes that are in progress right now, the Affordable Care Act, for example, how that might affect that cash flow down the line, if we have any idea at all.
Sure. Well, we can kind of speculate, but I think the themes and the trends are what they are, and we know what they're going to be, and you know how many people are going to be on the exchange with all that stuff going on right now. Still kind of remains to be seen, but I think with the Affordable Care Act moving forward, theoretically, less people will be uninsured, more will be on the insurance rolls. I think from a trending standpoint, more people will be on state or state and federal types of programs. And so having more people be insured is a good thing, but it also puts pressure back to our comments about payer mix, more and more being on government programs. That's not better paying, reimbursing types of services. So I think the trends are going to continue, that we expect that we're going to see more patients on government programs. And part of the forecast that's built in there is we've seen a trend this past year about 2%, as I talked about deteriorating payer mix, a 2% increase in government sources and less on commercial. We built another 1% into the forecast for this year. So I think the trends are going to continue, that we're going to see that pressure on the payer mix for us as a healthcare organization. And so back to the work we do on the cost structure, that's going to continue to be the theme for the day, as us looking to find ways to be more efficient and effective with how we're providing care to our patients. I don't know if that answered your question totally, but I'd be glad to.
I think, I think what you're doing on cost reduction is excellent. The comments are pretty on point. I think that's where you're going to find any savings. You're not going to get, you can't sit back and rely on any extra revenue, it looks like. So, thank you.
And that's, I think, a trend that's very, very real.
One comment that I'd like to share and add to that is one thing that makes us nervous about it is, we are very people business, that if we have more business, we need more people to take care of that business. The difficulty is the business, that extra business might be paying us less. So we're going to have more volume, more need for staffing, but we're going to be getting paid less for it. And that's a real concern, that we don't quite know how the Affordable Care Act is going to impact that. Like Mike said, there may be more people insured, and they may utilize more services, but it actually may hinder our profitability because of it.
Thank you.
Councilmember Ahman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thanks for being here again. Once a year we get together. My question is on page 8, you have depreciation, amortization, interest, and bad debts. Bad debts, of course, is always of interest to everybody. So I just thought I'd ask you, it looks like your projected 2013, you'll be about $331,000 lower than the previous year, 2012, for bad debts. And could you explain that?
Well, yeah, it's a complicated deal, because part of it gets into, we have a line that is not broken out here. In the monthly financials that we share with Steve, it's called uncompensated care.
Right.
And so we've done a very good job of attempting to identify early on in the process if a person would meet the uncompensated care guidelines. And if they do, then they are treated a little bit differently, in the sense of they get deducted from the charges right away. And the bad debt relates to people who don't meet the guidelines, but then they just don't pay. And so part of it is that our uncompensated care has been growing historically in the past, and that has been really just somewhat a shift from bad debt up to uncompensated care. But one thing that's important to see, and I hope we have that ratio here, and I'll try to just address it, is on page 11, when we talk about our bad debt expense, and it's about 2/3 of the way down. We're right around 2% bad debt expense as a percent of net patient revenue. The industry average is about 7%. So what that's saying is the patients and the customers we serve are much more diligent about paying their bills, and that's something we can all be very proud of.
All right, thanks for the explanation. I appreciate it.
To also your question, though, Councilmember Ahman, we really look at, to Bill's comment about charity care, we've worked hard in the past number of years to proactively identify those patients that may meet the criteria for charity care. And when we really look at charity care and bad debt, it's kind of all part of one bucket. It doesn't show up as one on the line items. There's bad debt, and then we have charity care in a different area. But we've really tried to proactively identify those patients to try to help get them the assistance that that they may need either through the policy and a write-off, or we also have financial counselors that also work with patients to try to get them onto other programs if they meet the criteria for those. We've also trained in this past year, a number of our financial counselors and staff have been trained to help assist at least our patients that we see at the hospital with MNsure to get them onto programs through the exchange as well.
One other question, and with that debt, on the debt incurred on the statement for that individual, is there a certain portion of that is paid, or is it, there's no separation between the doctor's services and the hospital services? Is this just this is the hospital services only? Does that mean that the doctor doesn't get paid also?
The doctor's services wouldn't reflect on,
On none of this?
On none of this. None of this.
Okay.
Other than, we've got psychiatric services and professional services through the emergency department where we employ the ED docs. Otherwise, professional services, none of that would show up.
I kind of assumed it was. I just
Yeah.
Sure. Thank you.
Just as maybe a little follow-up on that, the Rice Trust also helps pay some of those
Yeah.
expenses, does it not?
It does, and it's helpful. I would just say with the times that we're in exponentially with dollars and inflation and everything, it's still helpful, but there are a lot of needs out there, and we do proactively use the fund, obviously, every year for patients and needs, but.
Just want to make sure that gets credit.
Yeah, absolutely.
Did you have a question, Councilmember Dockin? Go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you for coming. You indicated that from your standpoint, the trends as far as volumes are flat. Why is that?
I think there's there isn't any one thing particularly that, and I would say it's a multitude of reasons as to why volumes are the way they are. One of the things that I think is very real that we've experienced is people are on higher deductible plans. People are not seeking out certainly elective care like they have in the past. They're putting it off, and we've definitely experienced that. I think some of the other trends as it relates to reform, the Affordable Care Act is, when we also are proactively working, for instance, with clinics and others to try to decrease utilization, is the forces around trying to decrease utilization as well. So readmissions to the hospital, things like imaging and outpatient utilization, diagnostic procedures. We've seen our emergency room visits have been down some over the past year or the past couple of years, where they were at a fairly flat level or had grown a little bit, from 5 years ago for a couple of years. But the last few years, we've seen a decline in some of that with emergency room activity as well. So there's a variety of reasons. I think with payer contracts, things like total cost of care contracts, for instance, with ACMC, there's a goal of trying to reduce utilization on the ambulatory side. We feel that downstream with utilization. That's a good thing for the patient, good thing for cost, but we're still in a fee-for-service environment. We're still in that kind of in-between phase where the incentives for us as a provider and how we're going to get paid for decreasing those readmissions, for instance, we haven't come to the other side yet. So there's a lot of forces in play that are impacting our utilization.
How much impact do you see the Affordable Care Act having on the bottom line?
Well, there certainly puts pressure on the bottom line. I think part of the challenges with public policy is how is the money going to flow? And I think part of where we go futuristically in our community is we're going to it's going to continue to push us to work more and more closely with our medical staff, with our clinics, to coordinate care across the continuum. We're certainly in this thing together. The payment system and how the money flows is certainly an important part of that, but I think the reality to whether it's now or into the future, volumes being flat, reimbursement not going up, it's going the other direction, that's going to continue to put pressure on us. And I think, again, back to the bigger picture, we're going to have to continue to look at ways to work more closely with our medical providers to find efficiencies in the system and to continue to provide high quality and good outcomes to our patients. And how the government reimburses us for that, for the outcomes, is really part of the picture that is going to be very important for providers.
Thank you.
Councilmember Nelson?
Yes. Just a question, you kind of alluded to outpatient being flat. I'm just curious if there is any concern about leaving the community, going to other hospitals, just with marketing, and also the second part of that is recruitment to our community for doctors. I just wondered if you would speak to that with where we're at with that.
Sure. Well, it's always alarming when you've got some trends downward with volume. I don't think that they're, in most areas, that the concern is that the patients are leaving the community. Now, that whatever business you're in, there's always some of that may go on, but we don't think in any significant way that's the case. We've certainly got more opportunities that we can seize upon, but as we talk about recruitment, we've certainly got areas in particular service lines related to recruitment where we can keep and capture and have more patients stay locally and have the access to care locally for services. Things like orthopedic services, some other subspecialty services are areas where we know we've got opportunities and we've got some issues we need to resolve as far as recruitment and the numbers of physicians we have in particular areas to make sure that we've got good access in our community. But I think part of what we've seen with outpatient utilization is it's similar for us on the hospital side as it is on the clinic side too. The clinics are experiencing similar types of things. And we've seen utilization down in some of our service lines where we have joint ventured services with ACMC, things like the Cancer Center, imaging services, volume at our ambulatory surgery center over on the ACMC campus as well. So there's a combination of a number of factors.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Well, thank you, gentlemen. We appreciate the report.
You're welcome.
And again, for the council, this will come through our minutes, or their minutes will come through our packet and will be approved in that manner. All right. Moving on the agenda, I think we'll take the next two items and then we'll take a break. But right now, we'll hear from the mayor. He wants to make some comments regarding the budget.
I think I will read what I have to say. I was elected in 2010, quite overwhelmingly, I might add. And as part of my campaign, I promised to reduce spending, and that is what I intend to do. In my opinion, we cannot continue to spend the amounts that we have been spending on conference, travel expenses to and from all these conferences, not to mention time away from a job that employees are being paid to do. If it is for specific training, I am not opposed to that. That being said, we are not in a desperate situation, and we don't want to be either. If the council wants to add back in some of the reductions I have made, I am willing to look at that. The council can consider many things to do with the savings, but I would recommend transferring these savings to balance the budget and to repair city streets. And that's all I have to say.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I think right now, then, we'll go into the community group funding requests. Just the way that I'd like to see us do this and the rest of the budget is, we've heard all of these things. I think we've had all of our questions answered. That's certainly not to say that we can't ask questions and make statements, but I think that we want to be mindful of each other's time on this and not be repetitive in what we're going through. So we will go through this in an organized, business-like, non-emotional way, and we'll get this handled. So the first one that we have is the Willmar Design Center, and I should refer to this document that was at your station.
Yeah, and there is, I would point out there is one error in that the Willmar Area Multicultural Business Center was not funded in the administrator proposed or the mayor proposed, and so that would actually be, the request was $20,000, but it was not funded in the administrator department proposed, so that is incorrect. It should be, that total at the bottom should be $114,000.
Okay. with that correction. Now,
Excuse me.
yes.
Here, I'm trying to find out where you're at here. Is this the document you're looking at?
This document that was at your station.
And where's the 114?
And the fourth line down, the proposed, there was nothing proposed, so you crossed the $20,000 out there.
But the
There was a
the
request for
of their-
20,000.
Okay, just cross the 20 off.
Yeah, there's three.
So that gets us down to the 114. Okay, I
Yes.
see.
Now, on the Design Center, they had 3 parts of their request, I believe, that totaled the 58.5. It seems like it was 32, do you have those, the 32.5, and I don't remember how it was broken out.
You'll give us a minute here. All of those documents were previously
I know they were, I just-
distributed,
but
so
I-
let me find, yeah.
I
can
have a
find-
reason for asking that.
Yep, I can find that, just, if you'll just give us a moment. If Mr. Oken finds it first, he can answer the question. We'll see who's quicker.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, yes, there were three items in their request. The Design Center was requesting $25,000 for project services from tree line for the design consultant. The second item they were requesting was $1,500 to send a person to Main Street National Conference. And I'm trying to locate the third item here.
I think it had to do with the design and things of Selvig Park. Maybe I can find it.
I can't exactly locate it in their letter of request.
I see that we have Bev Doherty here. Maybe I can call on her to help us, so we don't need to flounder around. Can you just come up and tell us how the request broke out, please?
Thank you, I appreciate that, but John will be here, our treasurer, at 5. Is there a way
We're
to?
probably going to be done. So you don't remember either. All right.
Mr. Mayor, I did find it.
I didn't bring it with me.
Okay, we've got it. Thanks, Bev.
And it did have the $25,000 that I mentioned for the Adam Arvinson design facet. They showed $1,100 for liability insurance, $1,800 for office rent, and $30,600 for the project coordinator and operating expenses. That totaled the $58,500 that they were requesting.
Councilman Anderson?
Yes.
On that sheet, that Selvig Park is part of the 25,000 that you were questioning under the ad
That include
contract.
the 25.
Selvig Park.
Mr. Mayor, members of the committee, the $25,000 did include $18,000 for Selvig Park, $3,500 for Becker Avenue, and $3,500 for the Glacier Lake State Trail. That was broken down in those 3 facets for the planning side of it.
Okay.
And again, council members, you should have these documents in your 3-ring binders. I believe they were provided at an earlier meeting.
Okay. I've got it in front of me here now, thanks to Councilmember Johnson. I think part of the discussion that the Finance Committee had was perhaps funding at the same level as last year, and then putting the Selvig Park and some of those other items back to the city in with our parks planning and that sort of thing. That's what I think the Finance Committee was thinking. Am I getting agreement on that? I think the recommendation from the Finance Committee would probably be to fund $32,000 of their $58,500 request, and then the city would look at these other items fitting into our park planning.
What was the 3,200 or 1,000 for?
32,000.
Operations and rent?
Essentially.
Okay.
That's what they had gotten in 13.
There is in the information that was with the agenda, the Finance Department did put together kind of a summary on the community group funding, kind of a 5-year history of 2008 to 2013, and you can see that, I think, the Willmar Design Center is on page 3 of that if you're looking at what was funded in the prior years.
Operating cost is 32.
32.
Yeah.
Okay. So what do we want to do? Councilmember Christensen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess I need an explanation on here of the funding as far as public purpose. You know, we're supposed to have a public purpose here. Public meaning everybody in the city, my ward, second, third, first ward.
Well, I'll take a shot, and then I can let others do it. But let's remember that in May of 2012, we adopted the downtown plan. And that was a 19-point thing that talked about what we were going to do, and we bought into that. So I think we must have decided at that particular time that that was the public purpose. So if we didn't want to fund the design center, then we'd have to hire staff or get that work done in some manner. So I think we've already made the decision that there's a public purpose here. But would you care to comment?
Well, I think, I think you summed it up accurately. You have been funding them since 2008 at different levels. And so, and it is in partnership, and the investments are made in the downtown and include various activities that, I think, by funding since 2008, you've made that determination. And at what level you wish to continue to fund is the question.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, if I may, when we funded it in 2008, it was $60,000. I'm trying to remember the argument for doing that. Now, you just mentioned that they're doing some things that we would probably pay for otherwise. And what are those?
Everything that they do would have to be picked up somewhere. They do a whole lot of different things there. The downtown, I would say that the downtown has moved forward primarily because of the work and the emphasis that the design center has done.
I guess I would argue with the word moving forward, or the statement.
You don't like moving forward? Okay, the work that has been done down there, it has a different connotation to you and whatever, but the work that's been done that has brought the downtown to where it is today is primarily on the strength of the design center. And let's not forget also that in 2011, the mayor convened a group of people. There were meetings. I remember the one in Bethel to talk about the downtown and what we wanted to do. And there was considerable momentum to move the downtown forward. So this is just an extension of that.
I realize Mr. Christensen isn't here yet to speak for the Willmar Design Center, so I'm just curious. I know they've brought a lot of dollars into this community through grants and other funding, and is it appropriate just to ask someone here from their board to speak to that?
If she has that. I know it's been millions of dollars, but Bev, if you can,
Or
Gary?
Or Mr. Geiger may be able to.
Okay. Would you introduce yourself, please?
Councilman, I am Gary Geiger. I'm chairman of the Downtown Willmar Design Center right now. 1 month left. I thought I should point out, the work being done on the Robbins Island path, that's as a result of, partially as a result of a grant that our people got. So that's one example. the HRA has been running a program, the Small Cities Grants, and quite frankly, we were the ones that did a lot of the legwork for getting that done and getting the applications from all the businesses downtown. They spent, it's roughly $2 million so far on buildings in downtown to improve them. And most of it you can't see because it's things like roofs, air conditioning, and maintenance, basically. But it's still needed work. We hope to be working on another Small Cities Grant in the future, if we can use up the money that we have right now. So, and we're getting close to that. On that page in, well, you don't have the report though, do they? The one we did in August?
Yes, we do. We should have.
You do? The page I'm looking at is the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, fifth page. And item number 10, measures of programs outcome.
Maybe for those who are still struggling to find it, you could review a few of those? I mean,
Sure. Well, we're still trying to follow the downtown plan that was adopted by the city. And there are certain items in that downtown plan that identified the design center as the champion. And so those are the things that we're primarily working on. At the beginning of the year, we sat down with our committees and we said, okay, now you're in charge of this and we're in charge of that, and broke up the things that we're champions for. So those are the things we're working on. We're going to be working on the third D grant, and we have some ordinances downtown that we want to make sure that it ever be followed. So we monitor that. The gateway designs, we worked hard on that, and the city hired Adam to do the detail work on that for us. The $55,000 grant funding received in 2013, $60,000 applied for in the first half of 13. We're working right now, as a matter of fact, several of us in the Willmar Design Center spent most of the day working on this food hub for downtown. And then item G is, we did get accredited by Minnesota Main Street, which makes us eligible for various grants. So I think your return on investment is really pretty good overall.
Councilmember Anderson?
Yes, Councilmember Nelson.
Just a question on the gateway designs. If we don't, are there funding opportunities out there outside of just city dollars to be used for that? And is there something that we need to do to start that process? I mean, if we don't want to fund that full amount this year, is there something that we need to do to help start that process?
We have access to a thing called Foundation Source, and we can search our resources for that and try to find those things. I don't think we've actually done that particular one yet, have we? Okay. We haven't actually done that one yet, but that's a good idea. We could do that.
Just curious.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, thank you. Can we research last year at this time when Mr. Christensen was up here, and I apologize for Mr. Christensen that he isn't here yet. I need for him to defend himself, but I think he made the promise in last year's minutes that we would not fund it if we funded the $32,000.
I'm not sure that I follow.
No, I mean that last year, I think Mr. Christensen said that if we fund this year, or that year, yeah, this year.
2013.
2013, at $32,000, that he would not ask for more money this next year. And I think that would be in the minutes of last year.
I can't answer that without doing some research, I'm sorry.
Yeah, but-
I don't know if the finance director can, or,
No, I mean, we certainly could review the meeting and research the minutes.
Yeah, we can do that, but I want to try to move this forward so that we can get our budget finalized. I guess what I'm suggesting is that we don't increase the funding over last year. We go no more than what they did last year. You have zero in the budget. Councilmember Ahman?
Thank you. Just some thoughts, talking out loud here and trying to negotiate and discuss this and keep everything amiable and everybody on track who wants to do their jobs. Other options might be that we just take and fund different projects of the downtown. For example, one thought I had was on the holidays parade, and that's in their budget. They have $5,500, down $500 from 2013, which was $6,000. And we sponsor and we promote $25,000 to the Willmar Fest, which is our annual summer festivities. And other options to consider, Finance Committee and the Council consider, is looking at the total budget in a way that holidays parade maybe is a community event, definitely, and that if we would sponsor that portion of it for sure in our budget, take it out of their budget and put it into our budget, $5,500, and any proceeds would go that they would accumulate on or profits, you might say, for the collection of the fees for people in the parade. That would go back into their pocket to help operate the design center. It's a thought.
That's a thought. I think the $25,000 to Willmar Fest is not in their budget.
No, it's not, and that's in our budget. Yeah.
All right.
I was just using that as an example.
All right.
We do fund other community events.
Okay. Well, one more time, I'll call on Bev, and then I'm hoping to get some decision here from the committee.
With respect to holidays is a break-even situation, but it needs people and volunteers to run it. It takes about 50 people to put it on who don't get paid. Everything that we do that's on the schedule I brought to hand out tonight has been covered by individual sponsors.
Okay. Councilmember Dockin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm intrigued by your comment, Mr. Chairman. You said that we approved in May 12 the downtown plan.
Yes.
Are you suggesting that everything within that plan has, in fact, a public purpose?
I would think so.
Okay.
There were like 19 items in there, and I haven't read them all, but I've got the preliminary part of it right here. Yeah, I suspect that it would. Well, here's the answer to all of our questions.
Too much people.
John, we're talking about the Design Center funding right now, and we're trying to come to some sort of a resolve on what to do here.
Mr. Anderson?
Yes.
Since you just got here, maybe it would be okay to ask him how he sees the Design Center for public purpose.
Mr. Christensen, yeah. The question was asked is how does the Design Center fit the definition of a public purpose so that it could be, in fact, funded by the city?
Well, I can give you a personal opinion on that, just from experience of working with the Design Center over the past years. When I look at the public purpose that I've observed through the Design Center, would be associated with one of the public purpose of looking at renewing downtown Willmar. When we look at the events, the opportunities to bring people downtown Willmar, to have people experience downtown Willmar, when we were looking at that, that is one side of it. The other side is to create the environment where we can start to initiate the rejuvenation of downtown Willmar. And so when we look at economic development is certainly a primary ultimate goal of the design center, and I look at economic development as certainly a public purpose and a benefit for the for Willmar as a whole. So I guess I don't know. I really don't know much about the design center that wouldn't be a public purpose, actually. Everything that we have. And we look at, or I think I can speak on behalf of the board, that the design center really looks at us as a partner with the city council, and looks at the purpose that we're doing as an extension of the city council and the direction of the city council. When we looked at the downtown city plan, that's been a definite focus of the design center this past year, and of the 19 portions of the downtown city plan, the design center was either a partner, a champion, or a major fundraiser on, I think it was 13 of those. And so in order for us to, one, focus on the council's downtown city plan has been our focus to help essentially the council achieve that.
Okay, good. Does anyone have any specific questions of Mr. Christensen? Okay. We need to move.
I'll make a motion that we approve the Willmar Design Center at the $32,000 level, which would be equal to the amount last year.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to fund the design center at $32,000. Further questions or comments? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
No.
No. That passes. Thank you. Let me get back to my agenda here. The Willmar Area Multicultural Market/Business Center. Their request was in the amount of $20,000. Again, nothing in the mayor's proposed budget. What do we want to do here?
I have a couple questions.
Go ahead.
We've never funded this before, and I also noticed that Ms. Stevens hasn't put it in her proposed budget, so I wanted to just ask her opinion on that. But I do remember him talking about being able to leverage with grants and some of the other things if they were to receive funding from the city. So I'm just wondering if anybody has any more information on that and question.
Yeah, I expect somebody to be here from that group. I think people were told 4:30, 5 o'clock, so they may be on their way. I think in terms of why I did not include it in the funding, I felt because it was a new request, it actually just needed to be reviewed by the council and the mayor, and so I didn't.
Okay.
Because it was a new funding request, they had the opportunity to really, for the council to discuss that and provide direction to the staff on that.
Okay. Mr. Anderson, would it be appropriate to take a break?
That's just what I was going to
Yeah.
suggest when you were done talking.
Okay, I'm done.
I'll
wait
think
for that.
I didn't realize, I thought they were coming in at 4:30.
I think I told people, 4:30, and
All right,
I can't remember now if I said 4:30 or 5. I apologize, but
all right.
we
Let's take 10 minutes, then.
we did our best to estimate the time the first half
Yeah,
would take.
yeah, that's fine. So we'll take 10 minutes.
And we're not able to use.
Okay.
Wait a minute. Hold on.
Losing all my power.
All right, let's reconvene. And we were talking about the Willmar Area Multicultural Market Business Center request of $20,000. There were a couple of questions. We didn't have anyone here at that time, but now I see Charlie. And you going to be able to answer the questions that we may have? Yeah, if you'd come up here. Councilmember Nelson had a question, and we'll kind of start back from right there.
Hello. My question was, I remember in the presentation before, the $20,000 that was requested the first time, that it was talked about being able to leverage that by getting other grants or getting other dollars and showing that our community was investing in where other funding was being requested. So I just wanted to make sure and hear that part again, or hear what you had to say.
That's correct. We do a lot of grants, federal, state, foundations, and one of the things that it's always very positive and that they ask for is, do you have any, is your community investing, or are they partnering with you and in expanding the multicultural businesses in town? And it would be nice if we could say yes to that, and this certainly would help that.
Was that amount picked for a specific reason? I don't remember that there was something specific about it, or?
You know, I did not bring, Roberto and Leslie are at, they were at a workshop in the cities and they're on their way back. And I did not bring that budget, so I cannot answer to that. He certainly could email you, or whoever he should email you.
We're going to try to work through all of these tonight. I mean, so I think we're going to try to decide what we want to do on this request. If I'm not mistaken, it was to hire an assistant. A good portion of the money went toward another person in the office. Is that?
Of course, that would always be beneficial, yes. It is only Roberto there, and Jeff Madsen works with the businesses, helping them establish business plans, et cetera, and he is a contractor. We contract with Jeff for his services.
Okay.
So yes, you're right. I mean, there is no other person there.
Okay. Okay. Other questions? Councilmember Christensen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm always concerned about new requests, because if they were this year, then how many years out are we going to do it? And I totally agree with the city administrator, and I guess I would move her recommendation, or to not fund the Willmar Area Multicultural Business Center.
That was, again, just to clarify, that was not a recommendation of the city administrator. I left it without a recommendation. I did not include it so that the council could make the decision.
Okay, we have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, so the motion on the floor is zero funding for Willmar Area Multicultural Market Business Center. Any further discussion? Councilmember Fagerly.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Charlie, I still don't understand exactly what they do there. They help set up businesses?
New businesses, existing businesses, create jobs.
Okay.
And Jeff, if you could help me.
Yeah, Jeff, will you introduce yourself, please?
Jeff Matson, business consultant. Give you an example, the last 18 months, we just grabbed our information and took it together. We created 54 full-time jobs, started 13 new businesses. It's been in the paper on some of our major projects. We do everything from entity setup. We have a small micro lending program, business plans, strategic marketing plans. So that's, I mean, for me, there isn't a day that's the same.
How many jobs did you say you've created? 64?
54 full-time jobs, and then there's some part-time with that. We don't really track that because it's.
And what percentage of those are with that company that's working up in North Dakota or whatever the big one is?
Currently there's 26.
Okay.
So.
All right.
So it's a training program, 6 weeks or something like that?
Well,
or ongoing?
We have three main programs. We have the incubator business with the commercial kitchen that we have there. Generally, if someone wants to start a restaurant, we work with them, give them consulting and technical assistance. They start up, and hopefully they outgrow our space to move on to go lease space in the other part of town. And then job creation is another big thing, another big goal of ours, is creating jobs. And then, of course, the economic development side of it.
Because I'm just thinking, you know, we have adult education at the college, we got community education, and we got the college. So couldn't you talk to them and have a program affiliated with them?
Well, we sure could. The difference between us and probably anybody else is it's the one-on-one. It's the one-on-one setting. We just did our percentages on retainage. We're averaging about a 76% retainage on our businesses right now. National average is 3 out of every 10 fail. So the one-on-one is really important. Different levels, different level of people coming in. From from an accounting standpoint, we do QuickBooks training. So we do a lot of pretty versatile.
Now, if I,
Go ahead.
it is not language classes.
No.
Okay.
I mean, they had a chef program out at the Botec.
Yep.
And there wasn't enough people in there, so they disbanded. There's other programs too, they don't have
And
it.
we do partner with Richwater, with anybody, with ABE, right. But this is mainly to create jobs for our community. So these businesses are creating jobs. These people are working. They're pumping money back into the economy. You know, that $20,000 probably translates into over $100,000 in return. I mean, you're getting quite a bit in return for that.
So does it have to be 20? Could it be 5 or 10? Just to show we support it?
Certainly.
So if you sign up for grants?
Yes. Doesn't have to be 20, it could be 50. No, but yes, but I agree. I think any amount would show that, yes, there is support from the city.
Because, yeah, this is the first year you're asking for funding, so you
Right.
must have had a reason why you didn't ask for it when you started.
I know that there was a grant that had come up, and one of the areas, you get scored. When you submit a grant, you get scored, and they look at all these things. And one of the areas that we scored 0 points on was that we didn't have any community supporters, specifically from the city or the county, dollars-wise. And I think that would have really made a difference.
Councilmember Anderson?
Yes.
I'd offer an amendment to the motion to fund the Willmar Area Multicultural Business Center at the level of $10,000 for 2014.
Is there a second to that amendment?
I'll second that.
Okay.
But then talk with the college out there, adult education, community education, to see if there's some program.
Well, I think when we provide you with a report, you'll certainly see that. You'll see what kind of work we've been doing, who we've been talking to, and what kind of programs we have been partnering with those entities on.
But you said you haven't yet with them.
Yes, we have. It just,
With the college and adult education and community?
oh, yes, yes.
With this program?
With many of our programs that we provide, yes. We invite you, come on over. We got tons of info for you. It's there. We report to the federal government. We have a federal grant. And that's when Jeff talked about creating those jobs. That was a specific task that they asked us to do. We didn't have to create 50 jobs. I think it was, what, 13? Yeah, 13 jobs with very little money. That's unheard of. And we are in the process again to ask for a bigger grant.
Okay, we have a motion, and now we have an amendment to the motion. We'll deal with the amendment. The amendment is to fund at the level of $10,000. So, all in favor of the amendment, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
That passes. So then we have to go to the original
Amended.
motion and
As amended.
defeat
No, now
Yeah,
now
yeah.
you're voting on the amended, now,
the amended motion.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right, okay. The amended motion. We vote on the amended motion, which is to fund at the level of $10,000. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
No
Opposed?
discussion?
Hmm?
No discussion?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I thought we had the discussion on the other part of it, but we'll hold that vote. I'm sorry. All right, go ahead. Did you have a question?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Oh, go ahead.
Well, I just had some questions, just for clarification. I appreciate the work that you're doing. Anytime you're talking job growth, that's always of interest to everybody in our community. Out of these 13 new businesses, could you give me some data as to what type of businesses they were? I know you mentioned some working out in North Dakota and other businesses. As far as full-time jobs, are these full-time employee jobs, or are these the owners of the company involved in this process? Because I understand there's a lot of smaller operations, husband-wife operations, or two women have gotten together and made a company trying to start their restaurant business or whatever. And so I'm just trying to clarify your numbers. And also, if you could ask me or answer me as far as how much of federal grants were given to these new businesses for startup funds through the Small Business Administration, through the government, and how much money and grants were given to that also.
Okay, first question. 86.3% are new full-time jobs that we exclude the actual owners from, because that's how we have to report it. So we're looking at 40, is it 44? 44 of the 56 were not owners. So what kind of businesses? Any range from insurance. Right now I'm working with an attorney, construction company, restaurants. I'm trying to think. So I mean, several different kinds of industries. And the last question was, can you repeat?
Oh, as far as assistance from the Small Business Administration for startup funds for new businesses, how much of that was given out?
We just started the loan pool that we have about a year and a half ago, and we've lent out $40,000 to date. And actually, we've had two of the participants pay it back in full. We haven't any defaults yet, but so we just expanded our loan pool to another 20,000, which it will be currently at about 60,000.
Okay, and that money comes from?
It all comes from two areas. We received federal dollars for it for micro lending, and then we have below market value when it comes to interest rates and loan closing. So we just keep adding to it to grow it, to expand it. And then the last thing we also have entered into is a business model. And what we're doing with the business model is if they don't meet the mission and vision of WAM-BC, there's below market value when it comes to charges, way below market value. Like, so anybody comes in, they want consulting or technical assistance with a business plan or whatever the case may be, and they don't meet the vision and mission. We started for QuickBooks too, like, we also started with a business model approach too, so.
One other question, just out of curiosity. We have a mix of different cultures in this community. Out of the people that you assisted, what's the percentage or breakdown as far as minorities and Caucasians and of these 30 or 13 new businesses?
Gee, I would say 60% is Latino, 30% Caucasian, and probably 10% Somali at the time. That's just kind of shooting from the hip. We haven't really took a percentage on.
Councilmember Christensen, do you have a question?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Are all of these businesses still operating that were started with the help of your organization?
Yes, from when I started, from when they started contracting me, it's been about 2 years. There's 54 current ethnic-owned businesses in Willmar.
Would these businesses have started without your help? I mean, like you mentioned insurance. I mean, whoever this was, he was going to go into the insurance business. He opened his own business, so he would have only opened it with your help. I mean, not but for.
Well, I'll give you an example. Since we're a non-traditional funding source, we have the option and opportunity to serve a niche market, and what that means is, if people don't have their credit established and stuff like that, that's where we'll step in. They can't go to a local lender. So on some occasions, we don't know. I mean, if they'd start up or not, we don't ask. But I would say out of those, and this has been prior to me, though, I think out of those 54 ethnic-owned businesses in town, I think WHAM BC has had some touch or feel with them in some capacity. So to answer your question, would that individual start up? I don't know. I guess the other end of that is, will these individuals be as successful? We want to eliminate some of the mistakes. You know,
program funding or income. What exactly is that? That's somebody paying you to. You said $22,000 of your income is projected to be program income. What is it?
That is the revenue I was talking about, our business model. What we just started. We started leasing some space for some of the businesses that have started or whatever at below market value to get them on their feet and stuff. And then so that's part of the revenue. We've also done some trainings with SafeServe, which is manager's license to understand. Okay.
But so you have space to lease that you can make some income off of.
Minimal.
And you have training that you can make an income off of, and you're projecting a $50,000 grant from the state for 2014. Is that a given? I mean, you're going to get it? That $50,000?
Good question. I'm not the finance for you. Which one are you referring to?
Well, your 2014 budget says you're going to get a $50,000. Part of your budget says you're going to get $50,000 from the state.
Okay.
And last year you got $68,780 from the federal government.
That was part of the CED that brought close to $300,000 to the city of Willmar, the community.
How?
Well, based on the 54 jobs that were created, based on the taxes generated from the businesses that were started, based on the loans that are out there.
On your budget here, it says 2014. There's nothing in there from the city. It's $22,000 program income, $50,000 from the state, which is $72,000. And you have $75,000 from other. What's the other?
And like I said, I don't do the finances for WHAM, and she's at a training.
I guess what I'm getting at is I'm very cautious, and I think we need to be cautious about all these programs that are funded by federal, state, county, city tax dollars. I mean, and they keep asking for more. And my caution here is I know they're going to be back next year for $10,000 or $15,000 or $20,000. And here we're looking at public purpose again here. Now, we're 60% Latino community is being served by them, 30% approximately Caucasian, and the rest of them the Somali 10%.
And that's an estimate.
Pardon me?
And I'm sorry, that's an estimate. That's shooting from the hip.
That's fine. I'll accept it as an estimate. But we're spending City of Willmar taxpayer dollars here that's been being funded by state and federal money, which is also our money. I mean, how far does this go on? I mean, they're going to get $50,000 of our money also next year. That's in their budget. You know, so here we are paying twice again, like we do with the county many times. I think it's fair for them to get a grant from the federal or state government to operate on. It's our money. It's still coming out of your pockets and mine. But to go to several branches of government to pull money out of there, I don't agree with that. I think it's counterproductive to our taxpayers' dollars, and we need to be looking out for those, our taxpayers, the people that voted us into office here. I can't do that in my business, go to all these branches and, I just caution you on funding this, because they're already getting taxpayer dollars, and they have in the past. And they did well with it. I mean, I compliment you on what you're doing. Don't get me wrong. I'm not against your Willmar Area Multicultural Business Center, but you can only go to so many branches and get dollars. I mean, let's be rational about this. And you did a good job with the money you got last year, and if you're going to get that 50,000 and 22 and 75, that's a chunk of money. I stand against the motion as amended.
Okay. So we have to work on the amended motion. I'm sorry.
No, I just got a clarification on the 75. That didn't go through. So.
Go ahead.
Oh, I just got a clarification on the 75. Like I said, I don't do the finances, but that didn't actually, that was tentative.
What do we want to do? Councilmember Fagerly.
Mr. Chairman, thanks. I'm wondering if this is the appropriate place for it. Maybe it should be under professional services, because when they gave their talk before, we get interpretive services. So maybe.
It certainly could be classified as professional services if that's what the council wants to do. If it's strictly for interpretive services. Yep. It would still be in a non-departmental type classification, but it could be classified as professional services if that's what you choose.
It's been funded in this category before, but as the finance director says, it could qualify and be moved to professional services if that's what you desire to do,
I would
to make
feel
it more clear.
comfortable having it that way myself.
Can certainly do that.
So, but I'll make a motion to fund them at the 21,000.
I'll second it.
Okay, motion and second to fund them at the level of $21,000.
And just for clarification, Councilmember Fagerly, to fund them as a professional service, is that part of your motion? Okay.
Yeah.
Discussion.
Question.
Yes, sir. Councilmember Ahman.
Could we get some verification from that as far as how many people are served from the city of Willmar in the future on the next report?
I think we got an update.
It was, maybe could have been a little more detailed, and as far as what type of services, translation to do what type of tasks. I'm not in, I don't mind funding, and I'm sure that people don't mind finding, helping our new neighbors coming into our community, as that's part of our melting pot. But I think we need to somehow quantify it, and if we can find out what services are being done so we're not having duplication.
Okay.
That's my effort.
I think we'll ask Charlie Lightsey to expand on that a little bit. You heard the question?
Right.
Okay.
I did give you a report of past performance. You're going to get one at the end of December that is in greater detail. And here I said that we had served 97 persons since the beginning of January through the end of September. And of course, we'll tally that at the end of December again. And I gave you so many hours. And then what sort of translations we do and we did. We will continue to do, for example, with the Waste Task Force, we translated those documents, and that took a long time, usually does. But I think what we'll do then from now on is whatever document we translate, we'll give you the exact hours that were done on that document so that you know. Or if people come to the office, we'll tell you that it took half of my day or half of one of my other staff's day or whatever it takes. Could be 4 hours, 8 hours. So yeah, that's fine, not a problem. We can do that.
The only comment I want to add to that is these all citizens in the United States that you help with translations or not?
Most are.
Okay, and that's not a qualification to get the service?
It shouldn't be.
Too. Okay.
Councilmember Christensen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Once again, the The amount from our taxes that they're getting for 2014 budget is $1,365,779. And then they're asking for $21,000 from us. They're already getting our money. And if that $21,000 could help for whatever, the next utility increase or potholes, we're talking real money, and it's people's money here. We helped start funding them when they started their organization. We put in so many dollars for so many years, and we've been cutting the last couple of years. They're on their own with all this federal and state money. They're on their own. Why should I or my constituents have to pay 2 times to this organization when they got plenty of money? So I speak against the $21,000.
Mr. Anderson.
I want to just ask staff, if we didn't fund it there, would we have to put money in the budget somewhere for translation services? Or what would we do?
Well, yes, we would likely have to be paying for those services. Either, either they would be billing us, for those services, or we'd have to find another organization to pay for those services. I mean, they're not services that we can provide. We don't have a lot of bilingual staff, and we certainly don't have people probably that are qualified to do the translation, the written translation of things like the solid waste regulations and such. That's pretty complex and requires a certain skill set that even somebody who may be able to speak the language is not able to do.
Thank you. Councilmember Johnson.
Thank you, Chairman. Charlie, I see you got an increase from 2013 for your budget up to the proposed amount in 2014 from whatever federal source you get it from?
Mm-hmm.
Is that all federal dollars?
Actually, no, we don't get federal dollars. We get state dollars.
State dollars, I'm sorry. I think I did know that.
And those state dollars have a specific purpose, and the purpose is to serve K-12 students.
Pardon?
The purpose is to serve students in the school district.
Okay, and so, I mean, we get translation services, the city does, but that isn't one of the purposes under your funding?
No.
Okay. How do you, I guess I'm curious how the state would keep track of that as far as what you're doing for extra funds. Is that something that's permitted or?
Yeah. Sure is.
Okay.
Is that it?
So we wouldn't, I mean, you don't provide any as part of your services, wouldn't you also provide translation services to other entities or?
The only other entity that we provide translation services for are the schools.
For the schools, okay.
And that would be mostly for special education.
Okay. And that clearly.
Special education funding is not our funding. That's a separate category.
Okay. Thank you.
Welcome.
Councilmember Nelson?
I think she already clarified it, but as I've looked at this, and I think we've discussed this before, if the city doesn't fund you the $21,000, you just wouldn't be providing services to the city. You would only be providing services to the school. So
Correct.
for us to question what you're doing with $1,365,000 is the school district's responsibility to administer, or your responsibility with them. The $21,000 is what you're providing for the city of Willmar, correct?
That's correct.
All right, thank you.
Okay.
One final question, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
How much funding is coming from the county?
None.
But you serve?
We used to, but, quite a few years ago, and they used to give us around $10,000. But the county is quite different than the city. They have not a lot of minority employees, but they do have Spanish-speaking employees and Somali-speaking.
But you service how large of an area?
With all of our, what the West Central Integration Collaborative serves 8 school districts, with Willmar being the largest.
And how many other municipalities are helping?
Just Willmar.
Just Willmar. Have you approached any of those other communities for funding?
No, because we do not do that We don't do a whole lot of work for them outside of the school system.
So there's no other need for interpretive services in other cities around this area?
Well, I believe there are.
But they're not being performed by you?
No, we would not be able to staff that.
Okay, but if somebody comes in and asks you for services, you don't care where they're from, you'll just help?
Right. For example, let's say, I know last year we got a phone call from Olivia. They had their first Somali family, and yes, then of course we did.
All right, thank you.
Okay, Councilmember Christensen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You know, if it's translation services we need, we maybe need to bid it out. There's several in town here. If we need to pay for them, the police department, I think, uses translation services. The hospital does. I believe the utilities do also. I don't know how they determine where they're getting their services from or who they're paying, but wouldn't it be prudent of us to bid this out if we're going to have a translation fee somewhere? Instead of just giving $21,000 to an organization that already gets, millions, at $1.365 million from the state, which is our money also. Maybe we, and is there something that says we have to bid it out if it's over a certain amount? If it's a service we use? What are we doing?
Just one thought. This $1.365 million, we got to forget that. That's schools. That's not us. That's not the city of Willmar. The $21,000, should we bid it out? I suppose that's a reasonable thought. I don't know how we would do that going into 2014. Maybe what we do.
Mr. Anderson. I just like, as we talk about bidding this out, what's the going rate for translation services if someone contracts with someone independently?
$50 an hour plus.
$50 an hour, okay. I know you gave us this statistic when you presented
Right.
before about what that we're getting well worth our $21,000. Do you have an estimate of what it's actually cost you to provide the translation services to?
Right, if we did 50 an hour and we actually invoiced you, it'd be higher.
Do you have an estimate based off from what you did last year, what it would have cost the city of Willmar?
No, I don't.
Councilmember Johnson.
Thank you, Chairman Anderson. I know from my work that, we need interpreters. There's no doubt about that. And the city needs interpreters. I mean, especially if they don't have bilingual staff that can do it. I mean, in my office, I've got 2 people that are fluent in Spanish, but when we have on occasion had a language barrier with Somali clients. And we've had some, I can't remember, it's a language from Southeast Asia that is very rare.
Karen? Burmese?
Burmese.
Yeah.
They have the language, I think, has a different name though, Chief, and I can't think of it offhand. But anyways, I realize that, and we need those services. And that was the purpose of my question, was whether I assumed you were allowed to do that, but I just wanted to make sure. And I understand Councilman Christensen's concerns and about possibly considering bidding it, but without bilingual staff in the areas that we need, no, we do need interpreting, so.
Is there some way that, would we be better off to, say, put the $21,000 in there and then have that as a place marker and bid it? Or what might our options be?
You can certainly do that. I mean, we can certainly allocate $21,000 to professional services, and then we can seek proposals from, the West Central Integration Collaborative and others and determine, a rate. And we would seek proposals based upon an hourly rate typically.
Councilmember Anderson? We
Yes.
do have a motion on the.
We have a motion and a second on the table.
Yes,
I'm aware of that.
okay.
Just trying to figure out what we can do here.
We've asked them to do detailed reports for next year, so maybe we can use that to determine we need to be bidding it next year.
Mr. Chair, if I may. The last time we had Charlie here, and she gave us a number. And I did the math on it, and I came out to $74 an hour. What she did divided into the dollars that we. Now, if she can supply that to us so we can make sure that's right.
The number came out at what?
$74 an hour, when I did the math.
I'm just wondering, was that for a partial year? The total dollars divided by the number of translations?
I believe it was for 2012.
Okay.
And it was the same amount of money. Excuse me. It had to be for a partial year, but I would rather have it in writing. I guess what we could do is amend the motion to do what our administrator has stated to.
Basically do an RFP.
Mayor.
Excuse me just a minute. Go ahead.
Maybe I could have her explain that again to us. You would take the 21,000, put it in professional services, and then.
And then we would seek proposals, and then we would, again, it wouldn't be a bid because it's professional service, and so we would do an RFP, we would seek proposals, and typically then, in this case, I think we would accept proposals based upon an hourly rate is typically how we'd structure this type of a proposal for services.
All right. Councilmember Nelson.
Just a point of clarification. You translate our documents, you translate, are we talking about all of the services that you provide when he's dividing and talking about $75 an hour? I mean, you've provided a lot of different services that you shared with us. So I'm just curious how we would decide, per hour, and how we would know in a year's time how many translations, in addition to somebody just walking in the door, you do translate documents that need to be provided, correct?
Right.
So is the number that you're talking about all of the services you're providing to the city?
No, not all of the services. I mean, we're not here to make millions of dollars. Obviously, our goal is to serve the populations and to educate them on city services, and certainly also pay for our staff's time. Whether that went over the amount of hours that I stated on there, it benefits us, it benefits the city. We're okay with it. I think $75 would be outrageous to charge. That's just not right. It's not about that.
All right, we've got a motion unless it wants to be amended. Did I?
Well, I'll make the motion to amend it, knowing that it may get defeated, but I will move that we take that $21,000, put it in the professional services, and bid out our translation needs.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to amend the budget to put $21,000 in professional services and then do an RFP on translation services. Councilmember Fagerly.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Charlie, how many interpreters do you have in your firm, and what languages do you?
We cover the main languages that are in town, so Burmese is Karen, Somali, and then there are some different African ones also, Urdu, and
could
then
be
Spanish.
5, 6
Sure,
different?
5 or 6, Mandarin Chinese.
Okay, so if we put it out on bids, we could be working with 5 different firms.
Potentially, unless, depending on how the RFP went out, if we said they had to be able, qualified to do all of them, or however you put it out.
Councilmember Anderson?
Councilmember
I
Nelson?
have a question for Ms. Stevens. Based on the services that we've received this year, if we go to a per-hour figure, in your knowledge of what was done for the city of Willmar, will it cost us more money, do you think?
Well, I think, again, if we have a budget of $21,000, we'll have to live with that budget, whether it's West Central Integration providing those services at that amount, and then we would have to, we'd have an hourly rate, and it would be, I would I would say that the RFP would be structured for the various languages, for the oral as well as the written. And, we would manage that like we would manage any other contract. When we start to bump up against the amount, the $21,000, we would have to make choices on whether we're going to continue to translate documents, if that's, if that's the higher cost. And I'm not sure which you charge if the translation is a higher cost than the interpretation, but we would, all of that would be defined in the RFP, and we would, look at that, and based upon the hourly rate, and we would estimate, and we would internally on that RFP also probably, when we put it out, estimate the, what we estimate the rough hours to be, so that somebody can give us a proposal on that and make sure that they are available for those times.
Okay.
Is how it would be done.
In the interest of moving along.
Can I just make one comment, Mr. Chairman? I'm sorry.
Brief.
Thank you. I just want to caution us on what we're doing. Things can get started here, and my question was more not related to providing services to the people that are moving to this country legitimately. I have no problem with that. It's just that how are we going to end it? We're going to fund something, but how are we going to end it? I recently attended a SALT conference at the Avery Church this Saturday. And SALT is the Somali African Learning Training, and it's a group that helps provide services and help coordinate people and newcomers and refugees into this country, of which Canada is getting 4 times as many refugees as the United States, for your information. This is a problem that's going to continue to happen with worldwide economy right now, and once we start getting into this, it's going to be larger. That's why I asked the issue of the county. Is this just a City of Willmar County, City of Willmar issue? I don't think so. When we look at jobs and the movement of people throughout our community, I think it gets much more broader than that. I support the motion only because I believe those services are vital to welcome the new people into this country, so that they can become part of the country. But also in the refugee status, there's 5 years. Just for information, there's 5 years, and by that time they have to become citizens of the United States. And if they don't after two more years, then they are able to be here on a green card. After 7 years, they have to leave the country or hide. I don't know.
Okay.
But my point is, this is going to get worse. This is not the first time this is going to come up, and we, the taxpayers in this community, are going to have to either provide the service or tell people, no, we don't want you here. And it almost comes down to that type of message with this type of vote.
Well, the other alternative would be that, as Councilmember Johnson referenced it in his organization, is that we seek staff that are multilingual, too. I mean, that would decrease our dependence on these services if we had staff that were multilingual.
Okay. Let's vote. We're not getting much progress here.
I understand. What we need to think about here, the county, they don't do it for the county. Who does the translating for the county?
I think they said they have
multilingual
staff.
Okay. For 27 different languages? They must have to hire somebody for Burmese or something. How about our police department? Who do they contract with for translation? And the hospital? And should we not look at what they're paying? And
the hospital, I guess, they're not here to answer that. Based on my experience in prior organizations, I mean, again, the hospital, you're dealing a little bit differently with some medical terminology, and again, it's somewhat subspecialized. Not everybody who does interpretation may have that terminology, just like the courts have specialized requirements as well. So, I mean, there's some differences and distinctions there. There may be some commonalities, but there are also some differences.
But they do have a line item for translating, and if I'm not mistaken, last year was over $100,000. I'm sure the police department has a line item for translations too. I don't know what it is off the top of my head here. I don't know if the chief does, but if that's the case, maybe we need a line item for it. You know, instead of just giving money and saying, yeah, we're getting the, we don't have the numbers here.
I think we said we're going to put it in professional services and be translation. All right, the amended motion was to put $21,000 in the budget and basically go out for an RFP. All in favor of that motion, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Whoa. All opposed, say no.
No.
Can you do a roll call for me, please?
We certainly can. Councilmember DeBleek?
No.
Sorry. Councilmember Christensen?
You voted aye on it.
Councilmember Christensen?
This is for the amendment.
This is for the amendment.
Aye.
Councilmember Amon?
Aye.
Councilmember Anderson?
Aye.
Councilmember Johnson?
Aye.
Councilmember Fagerly?
No.
Councilmember Nelson?
No.
The motion carries. I'm sorry, Councilmember Dockin, I apologize.
I'm an aye.
Okay, the motion
Okay.
carries 5 to
That-
3.
That passes. All right, so that's the amended motion. Now we have to pass
The amended.
the amended motion. Any discussion?
I don't know what it is because we totally changed what we were voting to
Well-
approve their funding.
I
So
can
what is the
try to
motion?
state the motion.
Go ahead.
Believe the amended motion is to allocate $21,000 in funding towards professional services and seek RFPs for interpretation and translation services.
Okay. All in favor of the amended motion, say aye.
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 Opposed? No. That passes. All right. Moving right along. Community Marketing Coalition, their request was for $1,500. Am I right? It's not on this list.
I believe it was,
I'm pretty sure it was
Sorry,
$1,500.
pull that up real quickly. It was given to you, it was in the finance agenda of September 30th, and the request is actually $2,000.
2,000?
Is actually 2,000. The funding in 2013 was 1,500. The request is 2,000 for 2014.
Okay. What do we want to do?
I'll make a motion to approve it.
I'll second it.
Discussion. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No. That motion passes. Okay. Now, we'll get into some of the reductions that were made in the 2014 budget. And we have a good bit of information here in front of you. Again, we've talked about a good share of this. We can certainly answer questions, but I don't think we need to go around and around and around about this. The first item is travel and training. Now, the sheet that you've got here breaks out it summarizes the travel and training as it was presented to us at one of our meetings. I think it was September 30th. And it shows what the total is, it shows what our history has been, it shows what was proposed, and it shows what the mayor has proposed. And there's explanations at the bottom of that that can explain some of the differences on a year-to-year basis. So in the budget, we have $57,308 for travel and training. That's the proposed amount. Staff had proposed $84,615. Now, I just want to draw your attention to a couple of big items. Fire department is in there for $25,000. We've authorized hiring 7 new firefighters, and a good share of that will probably go towards that. We have $30,000 for the police. So that, if you want to assume that those are both necessary and shouldn't be reduced, and the police wasn't, that's $55,000 that we've got, leaving the balance there of $30,000. We basically cover those two items with what the mayor has proposed. There's no other training. And frankly, I think that's an insult to our employees, that we don't see enough value in training them. And some of the other trainings are mandatory. I don't see how we can make this work. But what's the wishes of the committee or of the council?
Councilmember Anderson?
Yes, Councilmember Nelson.
I would make a motion to fund the training and travel budget at the level of $84,615, which is the administrator's proposal. I believe that covers mandatory training, best practice training, and also the small amount of $1,290 for voluntary training. So I would make the motion to fund that for that total.
Okay. Is there a second?
I'll second it for discussion.
Okay. Remember also in this is the mileage that we pay for people driving around town in their own personal vehicles. We made the cut in and reduced some 12 or 15 vehicles a year and a half ago. So now we pay mileage to people to use their personal vehicles. We were not able to break out the mileage that was just that driving around town versus the mileage we paid going to training.
Councilman?
Mr. Mayor.
Could you tell me, explain to me what travel and training includes? I want to know what travel and training includes that the council is voting on.
Well, I guess I would ask you, you cut it. What did you think you were cutting?
Well, I thought I was cutting, and I did cut the travel and training percentage. I did not cut entirely. I cut a percentage out of travel and training.
Well, you know, travel is mileage.
Okay, but it does not include motels or hotels or whatever.
Yes, it would.
It would include that.
Yes.
And training is the fees that you pay to go to the training. Now, you know, and there's not always mileage involved in this training. I look at the fire department; they do a lot of their training here. So, I don't think it's right to assume that every bit of this training is done outside the city of Willmar.
Well, and I would clarify, or want to clarify, that I am in favor of the police department and the fire department getting their training, whatever training they need. And I want to make that perfectly clear. However, the Coalition of Greater Minnesota Cities
Wait a
12
minute.
Conference.
That's not in this category.
Well, it would be.
That's in
It's
dues
a
and
hotel.
subscriptions.
Mr. Chairman, maybe I can clarify for the committee. Travel and training would include any kind of out-of-city training or conferences. It would include any kind of mileage to and from.
Right.
Also mileage within the city, as well as
And it also can include any training or seminars that are done within the city.
locally
If
as
that's
well.
It does not
computer
include the
training.
dues to the
It
coalition.
does not include the dues,
Does
but it
not
would include
include
any fees to it, to attend.
Okay, well then I'll hold off on this.
Okay.
Councilmember Anderson?
Yes, Councilmember Nelson.
I know that you've gone through, and I read off the line items that you've talked about mandatory. I did an estimate, and I'm just of new employees that we will have, and I guess the learning curve in the first year, there probably is more training requirements, I would say, and even with mandatory, I know it goes on, but I've estimated that where we're at right now, we will have approximately 15 new employees next year between engineering, accounting, assessing, surveyor, administrative assistant, public works, and firefighters. And I think these training dollars are necessary. I think we're probably on the short end. I've said before, I believe that we and our staff need cultural diversity training and some other training that has not been provided. And I think we need to step up to the plate and fund these dollars for training for our staff and our new staff, and to take a look at what the city needs to move forward.
Mr. Chair?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor.
I'd like to rebut that if I may. Let me get this straight if I may, council member. You think we're just fine the way we are and that no adjustment is made or no cuts are made? Or reductions are made in any, you think we're just fine that way?
Yes, I do, because I think the staff has done due diligence, along with the city council, in looking at what mandatory things are. And those figures are on this form right here. $69,440 of the travel and training are for mandatory training. Best practice, which helps us to go out and look at what's going on in other communities and how to do our jobs better and probably more efficient, that will end up saving the city dollars, is $13,885. There is $1,290 in the budget that is voluntary. So I don't see what we are questioning. We have mandatory best practice that is in the benefit of this city, and it is in the benefit of our staff. So I don't see where you think we can cut 50% from this. It's not doable.
What do you think we can cut?
I don't think we should cut anything. If I had...
That's what I thought.
My suggestion would be to look at the needs.
I think we've answered the questions there. But we have to look at the fact that mandatory training, just about $70,000. With the mayor's budget, we don't have enough money to do what's mandatory.
Well, we do if we add the fire department back in there, which I would. I'm not opposed to training in any form as long as it is called for. If it's mandated, we can have the training.
Well, in your budget, you cut the fire department training.
Okay.
You didn't cut the police department.
No, but I would entertain the idea of adding back in the fire department. I really would.
And I just say, what about the rest of the staff?
Yeah.
We're asking them to do things differently, to do things more efficiently. We're looking for ways to collaborate and work together. They need these training dollars.
Okay. Councilmember Dockin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think we're obligated to fund the mandatory. So what would that number be? I mean, who has the mandatory number?
It's on this sheet.
Okay.
It's $69,440.
I would move that.
Well, we have a motion on the table.
On the floor.
We have a motion on the table to fund $84,615.
That's mandatory.
No, that was total.
That's mandatory best practice, and then there's a little less than 1,300 that's considered voluntary.
Councilmember Anderson.
So excuse me. So if you wanted to do something, Councilmember Dockin, you would have to make an amendment to the original motion.
Well, if they're mandatory, I don't think we have a choice. And so I would move to amend it to include the mandatory.
To $69,440. All right, that's.
Now, excuse me, does that include the fire department?
Include the mandatory. He said move to include the mandatory.
And the mandatory is $69,440.
But the mandatory, I think the motion, again, just to clarify here, the motion is to include the mandatory. The mandatory is included in the 84,615.
Yes, and I'd like a...
Just a minute. I think what Councilmember Dockin was saying is that we don't have any choice but to do the mandatory. If you look at the total of the mandatory, is that not $69,000?
That's correct, 69,440.
Okay. I believe that's what he is saying.
Yes.
That is his amendment to the $84,000 original motion. Now, I got all carried away. Do we have a second on that?
Not at this point, Mr. Chairman. Not at this point.
Okay.
So that dies for lack of a second.
I'll second the motion for discussion.
Okay. The motion has been seconded. Is there discussion? Councilmember Christensen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just need a clarification on best practices. How was that arrived at again? Is that through, how was it arrived at? I mean, is it using an industry standard or something, or?
Yes, I mean, each department was asked when each department was asked to clarify what was what was mandatory, what was required for certifications, and what they felt was also best practice, which is, what is in the industry the best standard of practice, and keeping up with technical knowledge or other knowledge, and then what would be considered, kind of voluntary. And that's how we arrived at those numbers.
Okay, so our departments came up with best practice.
Each department was asked to do that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Councilmember Johnson.
Yes, thank you. I can appreciate the mayor's interest in in reducing our budget. It's a great goal. I think in this particular instance, the amount of money we're talking about, the difference between what's mandatory and what's in best practices, it's pretty minuscule, and I don't believe it's probably the most prudent place to make any adjustments in our expenses. It would be at the expense of some of our employees, I'm afraid. Like I say, while I applaud the mayor's efforts and his pursuit of reducing the budget, I just don't think this is the most prudent place to do it.
Okay.
Mr. Anderson, or Mr.
Councilmember Allen.
This whole thing is, I think you're right on spot there, Tim. I appreciate you coming out and just saying it and saying it like it is. That's what it comes down to here is the mayor's trying to cut the budget. He's trying to save the taxpayers' money. Good for him. But there's certain things you have to do. And whether or not this $69,000, if this motion passes, is not going to make any difference. Because if there's mandatory training that comes up, we're going to have to fund it. So it could maybe go up to $90,000. It could go down to $50,000. It's a budget. We're not really sure. With any appropriation we have in this budget, it can be changed either way. We do that constantly in our budget to move funds from one to another. I think what we're trying to do here is cut down on the mayor's comments about some of these conferences and people attending it. And if I remember him talking in the past about too many people attending from the city to a conference, 4 or 5 people from the city there, and including city council, mayor, and administration staff. Maybe it was necessary. I think that's the point he was trying to go. So I give him credit for that. We're all trying to save a few dollars for the taxpayers, and I just think that's an administrative thing that's going to have to be handled very cautiously and just be told that in the future maybe we should be critiquing more of these conferences, and that can be done through the city staff and the department heads and what training's being done. This isn't a big deal.
I agree.
And
I think you're exactly on, and I think the discussion is good. I think we've heard the need for training, but we need to be careful that we don't overspend. All right, with that said, we have an amended motion on the floor, and that would be to fund the travel and training at $69,440. All in favor of that motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Aye.
That motion does not pass. The motion then, the remaining motion, the original motion, is to fund travel and training at the amount of $84,615. All in favor of that motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. That motion passes.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
is someone keeping track of the increase?
We are.
Yes, sir.
We are doing our,
they're writing.
Okay.
we are. We're doing
All
our
right.
best. We believe we'll have a total at the end.
Because we have to balance the budget. We didn't have a balanced budget to begin with. We will have a balanced budget when we're done here. All right, now we go into dues, subscriptions, and memberships. This is formatted in somewhat the same manner, but there's a couple things that I think we should pull out and talk about separately. Under mayor and council, we've got the Coalition of Greater Minnesota Cities at $35,151, the National League of Cities, and the League of Minnesota Cities. You'll see that that's kind of in the middle of the page. That's under the mayor and council best practice. And I think rather than look at the big totals here, I would prefer to talk about those 3 items separately. because we've always kind of talked about them separately. I think it just makes sense to do that.
Mr. Chair, I would like to bring this up now, if I may.
You betcha.
The Coalition of Greater Minnesota's Fall Conference, which was held Wednesday, November 13th through November 15th. I have in my hands what the agenda was. The agenda started Wednesday at 2 o'clock for a Board of Directors meeting. And then at 5:15 was dinner and cocktail hour. Now, it didn't start until Thursday noon with lunch. Wow, this is great, huh? This is a party.
That's actually, excuse me, but that's not the corrected agenda. There was a modified agenda. It actually began at 9:15 on Thursday, the first presentation.
With what?
There was a presentation on economic development by Dan Dorman.
I didn't hear that. I have this,
That was an earlier version, yes.
Okay.
And the actual, they did,
okay.
that was in
But
their
I'm not
preliminary
finished
schedule.
yet. We had $100 a night for a room, 35,000 something for dues per year for this company. We had people that left and got paid for going to this conference. Where does this end? You know, in addition, they charge $220 per person for a Wednesday, Thursday, Friday conference, and $155 for a Thursday, Friday conference, and a dinner guest pays $30 per person. Now, to me, this is money. What do we get for our money? Can somebody tell me that?
Councilmember Anderson.
Go ahead, Councilmember Nelson, you were there.
I attended the fall conference. I drove up on Thursday morning and started
Collected
at
mileage, by the way.
9 a.m. I haven't turned it in yet, so.
Okay, but you will.
The day was very worthwhile, and it was very enlightening to hear and see what is going on in other cities.
How many excuse me if I may. How many opportunities do you get to see other cities? Quite a few, because these conferences are not uncommon.
You know, I think it's only proper that if someone is talking, you let them finish, and
Sure.
then we will call on you.
Okay.
The meetings were, the information was extremely well presented. We heard about the Greater Minnesota Partnership at 9:30 and talked about the different areas working on economic development around the area, looking for partners to help work for Greater Minnesota dollars, whether it be for roads, transportation, air, economic development. At 11:15, the presentation was on the initiative, workforce development initiatives in Northwest Minnesota. It was a very good presentation on how communities are going together and creating opportunities for employers and employees to be able to network, to put out there what jobs were available in the community. It also uses a scoring for employees to be able to, for employers to look at what qualifications meet certain jobs. That was at 11:15. We had a keynote speaker at lunchtime on the Greater Minnesota Partnership. We had a presentation during lunch of the robotics, the future of the industry, that was put on by the Alexandria High School robotics team. At 1:30, we had a panel discussion that talked about the Shutterfly, the Minnesota success story, and Shakopee and different economic development. People were there to talk about how Shutterfly came to Minnesota and created 320-some new jobs in that community. Very good presentation. There was information on deed. We had a legislative panel on bonding that talked about the different bonding, talked about, again, the work that needs to be done for outstate Minnesota to get its fair share of dollars for roads, for all of the different things that the bonding and different information with that. At 3:45, we had a presentation on get up to speed on transportation, and talked about sales tax, working with different cities. We also, at 4:15, had a presentation from the Alexandria city engineer on the new needs formula that will be done for streets and analyzing the municipal state aid system. There was a social hour and dinner that was a guest speaker that talked about broadband communications. It was an excellent day, very worthwhile. I think the dollars that the city spent for me to go there was very worthwhile, and I wish that some other people were there to hear about the good things that were going on. In addition to that, the networking opportunities to visit with other mayors, to visit with other council people, to visit with the speakers, to ask questions, to look at information that's out there on the internet and how to access, we're missing by not taking part of this. I think the dollars are very well spent, and I attended the state conference this summer, and there was excellent networking opportunities from civility to collaboration to all sorts of different things. And they are worthwhile conferences. And other communities are moving ahead with things and different opportunities by networking and also getting in touch with the different things going on in the state. They are important. I will quit with that, but I think it is appalling to hear the criticism of attending these conferences because they are very worthwhile.
And that's just one of the things that the coalition does. Let's just talk about the coalition, and we've heard from those folks before, but they're really a lifeline for us at the Capitol. They are highly respected. The legislators turn to them for guidance and for correct information. I would ask that council members go down when they have the day at the Capitol, when cities go down there. I've been down there the last 3 or 4 years, and you can really see how the coalition impacts and interacts with the various legislators and the governor. I think I've said this before, but I'm going to say it again. The last year when we were down there, we were meeting, and there was a proposal out there for LGA and how it was going to be funded and how it was going to be distributed, and it really wasn't a very good program. And we had talked about that in the morning. The governor came late morning. He was asked some questions. The coalition posed some questions to him. And he said, okay, if my plan isn't right, then give me something that's better. The coalition did that. And that's just an example of all the things that the coalition can do. You know, cut a million other things. This one is really, really important in my mind. And what I'd like to do is vote on, I'm going to ask for a motion on the coalition, the National League, and the League of Minnesota Cities. But since we're talking about the coalition.
The League of Minnesota Cities is included in the mayor's budget.
It is included in the mayor's
It is.
budget? Good. You don't have to do that one.
I just broke those out just to show you where that is, but it was included in the mayor's
Okay.
budget, just
All right. So
for
then
clarity's sake.
The coalition dues are $35,151.
Per year.
Yeah, for 14.
Per year.
Yeah.
Right.
Councilmember Fagerly.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You know, I did ask to see if they would reduce their fees, and I already know the answer, but.
Yes, you did ask that question. They will not reduce their fees, just like the League of Minnesota Cities. They go through and they set a due structure, and that is the due structure.
Okay. I'll make a motion to continue with them at $35,151.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Further discussion? Oh, I'm sorry.
I have a question. Not a question, but just to add to your remarks, Mr. Chair. I've done some lobbying in the legislature for the agency I work for over the years, and the coalition, of course, does a lot of that, as you've indicated. And I think one of the key things that you're talking about is that, you know, our representatives change, as we well know, here locally. The members of the coalition, several of them have been there well beyond, through all of these people. So their contacts remain in place, and they make new contacts as new legislators come in. So while we might want to try to rely on our local legislators, these folks have more influence, period, especially when we're dealing with, you know, newly elected representatives. That takes a while to learn your way around down there in the Capitol. And coalition knows their way around, and I think on what they did with the LGA alone, that benefit to the city more than offsets the current cost of our dues. In the future, if they were to fall off in their performance, you know, maybe we should take a look at it. But as we sit here today, I think that they earn their money.
Anything else?
Could I make another comment?
Absolutely.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have here in my hands a copy of something that I got off the internet. Representative Erdahl asked for an investigation for employee conference spending.
For what?
For employee conference spending. And I just highlighted a few things I'll tell you about. They attended a 3-day conference at Breezy Point, which included 6 hours of meetings and 2 rounds of golf.
You're talking about state employees here, I think?
I don't know if it's state employees or not.
Well, if Representative Erdahl is, is a state legislator from Litchfield, I suspect it's a state thing.
Anyway, it is our responsibility to be good stewards for the taxpayers' money. And with that, I'm done.
Okay. All in favor of the motion to fund them at the $35,151, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion passes.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, sir.
I would like to make a motion that we set the dues, subscriptions, and memberships total at $72,507. It's everything in there except the NLC.
I would like to speak to the.
I'm sorry, could you repeat that again,
yeah, just a
Councilmember
minute.
Christensen? Just the number.
$72,507.
Okay. And that just, we didn't have to talk about the National League of Cities. That's what you took out of the balance. Was that motion seconded?
I'll second it.
All right, discussion.
I would like to see us remain a member of the National League of Cities. Mayor Coleman of St. Paul is the chairman next year. I think Councilmember Dockin forwarded an email we got on some of the things that are being done, and I think it's just as critical for us to hear what's going on the national level with the state. We're talking about $1,500 to remain a part of that organization, and I think it's worthwhile dollars.
Could I make one comment?
When she's done.
I think she's done.
Excuse me. Were you done, Councilmember Nelson?
It doesn't really matter.
Go ahead, if you're done. If not done, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Okay. I would like to just make the comment that, is there anything that she's not able to spend money on?
You know, we're not going to get personal on this. We've said that all along. This is not personal, and that kind of a comment we're not going to have.
Thank you.
Okay. Councilmember DeBleek.
Yeah, I would think we should support the NLC, National League of Cities. I know at particular points in time, I know council people have attended the National League conferences. We all get, information from them. I know our previous mayor was very heavily involved in the National League. And the dues at, $1,500 is not that large of an amount that is going to really affect the budget that much. It's, so if with.
Go ahead.
Can I make a motion or amendment to add?
Yes, you can amend the motion.
To add that to the motion that we increase it by $1,500 for the National League of Cities.
So it looks like it would then go up to 74,007, am I right?
Yes, that would be the correct amount.
Is there a second to that amendment?
I'll second it.
Mr. Chairman, you would have to take action on the amendment, and then the amended motion would be the 74,000 number.
That's
So
yeah.
two actions.
Yeah, we have, but.
Yep.
Yep.
Yes.
Yep.
The finance director is clarifying the amendment would be to include the 1,500.
Yes, which makes it
And then it would
74.
make it 74, but that would be the subsequent motion. You would vote on the 74.
Okay, okay.
So I'm sorry, who was the second on that?
I was.
Further discussion? Okay, all in favor of adding basically, of adding the $1,500 in, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, say no.
No.
Okay, that
The amendment,
Passed.
the amendment carries.
the amendment carried, so now the original motion,
Is now,
well, the
the amended motion would
amended-
now be the $74,007.
okay, that's right. So now we're voting on due subscription and membership at $74,007. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes. Professional services. Here again, you can look at this, and I think we've got some real problems on this one, because we've got some contracts in place, and there are two items that were not included on there having to do with the airport.
That's correct. They would be in the airport fund. There was $100,000 budgeted in professional services for the airport. Roughly 76,000 of that is the contract we have with Eric's Aviation that was bid in 2012, and it's a 2-year contract. And then there's 24,000 that is set for engineering services, which would be for Bolton and Mink. And that's not a fixed amount. That's based, that's billed at an hourly rate, but that's what that includes, and that would be in the airport fund.
Go ahead, Ron.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You said that's got to be added to this? Is that what you're telling us?
You could take, you would need to take action on it as part of the airport fund.
Separately.
If you wish to restore the funding.
Okay, so that
Again,
would be a separate motion?
Yeah.
It would?
It could be.
It could be. Maybe, Mr. Okins, is there another way we could do it that would be simpler?
The action could be, if you are talking in generality, unless you're going to go to individual line items again.
I don't think we're going to go to line items.
So then we would,
If the intent is to do it in total or in generality, then it would be handled as one motion.
What's the total that needs to be added to it? One what? For
then
the airport and,
then the total would be, for the two funds, you would be establishing it at $479,100, I believe.
so moved.
Discussion. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? That passes. Right now, the
Councilmember
vehicle
Anderson?
replacement schedule, we had gotten that in the past, but it was really hard to read. So I asked staff to give us one that was color-coded. We have the policy. We've talked about the policy. We've accepted the policy. What would you like to do, if anything, on the vehicle replacement policy, with the understanding now also that any expenditures in excess of $10,000 on capital items goes to the appropriate committee. So, and if we want a refresher, a brief refresher on how they come up with this, we can do that. We can have Chief Weifels explain it, because I believe he was the chairman of that committee this year. But do we want to take any action on the vehicle replacement policy? Councilmember
Just a couple questions. One is, refresh me again, the smart trailer, is that
That's the speed trailer.
speed trailer? Okay. I looked on the rest of them here.
Okay, I think we have a double check on this one when it comes back to committee, so there's no need to take an action then.
If you're not changing it, no, because it's been included in your proposed budget.
Right, that's in the proposed budget. Okay? All right. Capital Improvement Program.
There is if I may, Mr. Chairman, there is an amendment to the 2014 capital improvement pledge. You were given a 5-year, previously a 5-year proposed capital improvement plan. We've made a change to the 2014. One is in the area of the indoor gun range that was originally included at $30,000. I'm sorry, and based upon kind of what we have learned since then, we're now suggesting that $250,000 in 2014. We don't have firm numbers, but we feel that at least is a closer, more accurate number. And then also, another change that could be made would be to delete $20,000 from the fire department for the voice amplifiers, because those will be purchased in 2013.
I have a question. The 250, is that going to be a cash? Does that go in that?
That would be coming out of our, at this point, we're proposing it as a cash-funded project.
Okay.
And so that total would change for 2014 to $1,250,450 in terms of cash, and then the other items remain the same. At this point, we don't have enough information to change the Lakeland numbers from what we're proposing. So we would suggest you leave those the same.
All right. Capital improvements 2014. Anything we want to change?
Councilman Anderson, you had said there was how much for the Civic Center, or the auditorium?
For the auditorium, we had originally proposed $30,000. We're now proposing $250,000. I mean, again, we don't have mechanical numbers and such to base that off, but just in our rough estimations and talks with individuals, we feel that's a closer number. We may still ultimately come back if we need additional funds, but at least we feel we're getting closer. We've got a budget we're more comfortable working with.
Councilmember Christensen.
Go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Under the capital improvements, does that do anything for parks?
Yes, there are a number of park projects that are in there that are listed. I just have to, kind of find them here. 2014.
See, we have $30,000 for play equipment. We also have a wading pool in one of our parks that is
And we have not included numbers for that. Some of that is that we're in the process of doing the master park plan, and we don't have more refined numbers. So, and again, the way I would remind you with the capital budget is these are our projects that we anticipate doing. These are the ones that we have prioritized. It certainly can change, and we would come back with amendments during the year if there's a need to. I mean, either if the project cannot be accomplished or if there's a need to increase the budget for the project or something new, we would come back with an amendment to that. But these are our best, and I believe our overall capital transfer, if the finance director, I think, is $1.7 million. Is that correct, Steve?
I'm sorry.
That we are transferring $1.7 million from the general fund over into the capital fund for 2013. So, and we are proposing at this point just under, $1.25 million. So there would be some excess in reserve for capital in 14.
Thank you for that explanation. Do you have a motion?
No, there's no motion. No, we don't have a motion. I mean, we do nothing, we leave it, or are you suggesting a change? Just, ma'am, I'm asking.
I would make a motion to set it at the staff's recommendation at 1.250450.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. What was the exact number? 1.125000?
I took out the 20 for the
450.
Okay.
1 million.
Yes, I'm sorry, 1,250,450 in cash-funded projects.
Okay, and then the total,
That was with taking out the fire department?
And that was taking out the 20,000 for the voice amplifiers, yes,
okay.
because those will be funded in 2013.
All right, now, Councilmember Christensen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just about said Mr. Mayor.
No.
I've talked to a lot of people about the Downtown Gateways program and that $200,000 in there. My conscience won't let me keep that in there. We're so far behind on our street improvements that could be much better spent under street improvements. To spend $200,000 on one entrance to downtown, I can't fathom it. We need that money in street improvement projects. And it was a good plan. It looks really good on paper, but I just can't, I can't support that. So I would amend the motion, and do I have to specify putting it in a certain place, or just subtract it? And
You could simply subtract it.
Or you could take it out and just leave it in the total if you wanted to maybe go into streets at some point in time.
Sure.
Could we not?
Sure, as the mayor had stated earlier, for any budget surplus. Okay, my amendment would be then to take out the $200,000 for the downtown gateways and use it for street improvement.
Second.
Okay, now, I hear, and I understand what you're saying, but staff put that in kind of at our request. There was a meeting, Adam came to committee, he came here, we talked about what do we like, tried to pick from the three, and everybody said, yeah, we like the train featured thing. So that's why it got put in. So it was not something that came just as a blind idea. We didn't commit officially, but we kind of nodded our heads. That's where it came from.
However, the first estimates on the entire project was $1 million, and now we come down with 200 for the next 3 years. And the council approved the preliminary plan to do this. I don't recall that we made a vote on committing dollars to it at that particular time. The plan, yeah, it's great, and we all supported it.
Yeah.
However, things change, times change, and as the money came forward to see how much each intersection is going to cost, I think that money is much better spent on street improvements. And I mean, come to my neighborhood, I got potholes in front of my driveway, but my motion would be to deduct it from the total.
Did you specifically put it into streets, or could we just hold that amount? Because, there's been some discussion also on facilities.
I'll just hold that amount then.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, if I could interject here, if the action is to just remove the item from the list, the dollars would remain in the capital improvement fund, similar to the charter requirement where it stays in there for three years, only it would be in an unfunded balance or unappropriated balance, and action can be taken at a later date.
I think that's exactly what he said.
Yep.
Wasn't it?
Took the words right out of my mouth.
Okay, that motion, we did have a second on, did we not?
Correct.
Further
Okay.
discussion?
Further discussion, yes.
Thank you, Dennis. I share Councilman Christensen's concerns on this item. These are big dollars. We're not talking some of the amounts we were earlier. And my concern here is, I see we've got $1 million for the HVAC and refrigeration plants at the Civic Center, which are currently, I believe, held together with baling wire and duct tape. And my understanding from the Park and Rec Board, which I'm on a liaison for, the estimates were $1.6 million for those items. In addition to that, I see on our list some attention to the community center, which is also in need of numerous upgrades. And then, of course, the auditorium, where we have the gun range issue, and the dollars have grown there. Those three facilities, the auditorium, the Civic Center, and the community center, those are highly used facilities in the community, and I'm afraid, I mean, it appears to me, and I would be one of the ones at fault, that we've neglected taking care of those facilities. And for that reason, before we spend $200,000 on any gateways, I want those facilities taken care of. That's, I guess, my comments.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Councilmember Nelson?
I'm great with the motion to just set it out there for now. And I would probably lobby to say we have a pool at Rice Park that's not usable and is an eyesore to the community right now that perhaps needs to have some dollars spent on it sooner than later. And I think that will come out of the park plan, and so hopefully we can just leave the money there to lobby for what needs to be done to our facilities and parks. But with that, I do think the work was done to develop that those gateway designs, and I would hope that we would look at what options might be available for grant money or those types of things, that we don't just set it on the shelf and not do anything with it. But I'm in support of taking it out of next year's budget for now.
Councilmember Ahman?
Oh, thank you, Mr. Anderson. Yeah, the other item, too, is Public Works facility. There's another $100,000 there we're spending. And that's just keeping up what we have right now, but we still have deteriorating infrastructure throughout the city that I'm a firm believer is a #1 responsibility. And I support the motion to delete it at this point. And it's not saying that we can't, as Ms. Nelson mentioned. I support the idea. I think we were supportive of the overall concept of the downtown and the efforts of the design center. I just don't want that to be pushed aside either. I think it is something, and it's a dream right now that we'd like to have. And I look at it as a challenge for the, just a thought, brainstorming here. I see that as a challenge for the downtown business owners also to support this idea in some sort of monetary idea or monetary movement. I have not received and not talked to one individual other than the people on the design center who supported using $200,000 to put new entrances into the downtown. That is not going to change the perception of the downtown. Perception of the downtown has to change first, and that's the concentration that the design center should be working on more than anything else.
Okay. So, Councilmember Dockin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I agree with Councilmember Johnson. I mean, the three projects he enumerated need to have those dollars assigned to them.
So as we think about that, staff then will be tasked with the responsibility of reallocating.
We would probably, maybe it's best Mr. Okins can explain this. I think we've been over here trying to keep track here.
Yeah.
I think he has a good explanation.
Mr. Chairman, the discussion that's centered in the Capitol, from my notes here that I gathered, is that there's an additional $220,000 that's been added for the gun range at the auditorium.
That's right.
The discussion,
30,000 over the, yep.
The discussion also then is to remove the gateway appropriation at this point of $200,000, as well as the fire department $20,000, which is a wash.
We're even.
The action yet on the council's agenda to appropriate tonight is $183,000 of insurance
Just so everybody knows, excuse me, that's number 9 on our agenda, but it fits in here.
So at this point, if the council, by their action, would leave the 200,000 of the gateways as just removing it, those dollars are already in the capital fund. So you have the option of appropriating those extra insurance dollars towards the auditorium. That result of that, of all the action tonight, would be negligible then as far as any kind of changes overall on the total overall budget. So,
No.
in adding all this as we go through,
You add it all as you go through, that was
From the-
basically a wash, but you have 183,000 that could go in there, am I not right?
it could be applied towards the gun range
Or any other.
or any other
I mean,
purposes.
it can go back in there.
Street work or anything
Or
else.
it could be transferred
Yep.
and not allocated at this time.
If the council wants to apply the gateway and the fire to the gun range, then you would need to take action on the insurance.
Point of clarification, we're talking about the auditorium, not specific to the gun range, are we not? The overall auditorium.
The overall auditorium, yeah, you're correct. We have stated it in here as indoor gun range, but it would be more appropriate to state it as auditorium.
To the auditorium.
Yeah, because it could be used for any number of things at the auditorium related, the gun range being one of them, but others as
So
well.
do the extra dollars have to be appropriated, or can we just put them out there for a determination of what facility needs it worse?
Again, it's the intent of whatever the committee wants to do with the capital at this point. You're dealing with the auditorium, the gateways, and the fire department, which is a wash.
Right. I mean, we all get that. The $220,000. We had 30,000 in, we upped it by 220 to put 250, so we take 200, we
so
take
now we're at a
200
wash
out
from
and
where-
plus 20 out.
Yep.
That's all even. That's,
From the proposed budget to today, yeah.
yeah. So what does that do to our, so we need to basically then pass the amended
capital improvement
motion on the capital improvements, right? Does somebody have that? Because that was essentially to take that out, like what you had just said.
I'll let Carol look at her notes for all the amendments and/or amended motions.
From what I can tell here, what the amended motion is that Councilmember Christian moved to amend the first motion by removing the $200,000 for the gateways. And I believe it was intended to be just to be reallocated as a placeholder.
Yes.
Just what Steve said.
It was what Steve said.
It
Yes.
remains
So it's
there,
just
but it's just going to be a wash, like you said.
Right.
Yep. So are we clear on that, what the amended motion is?
That would be the amendment, to remove the 200,000 on the gateway.
But that's the amended motion, because we had an original motion on the floor.
Right, did you take action on the
We have to,
amendment?
we have to vote on the amendment.
Yeah, okay.
Okay. And we know what that is. That puts us at a wash. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes. Then we need to pass
The amended motion.
the amended motion, which is basically what we just did.
Correct.
Yep.
Yes.
Okay.
Formality.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes. Now, is there anything else in the improvement program that we want to, I think we kind of negated everything else. But the only other thing we've got, I think, is if we want to put the $183,000 that we got, because that was in the budget that we anticipated health insurance costs to go up by, they didn't, so we've got $183,000, and I think it was staff's recommendation to put that in capital improvement.
Right, would be to increase the transfer from, increase the capital transfer.
Does that make sense?
Mr. Okins may have to get what that exact number is if we add, if you need that, but I think you can just work with the 183 and we'll balance it out, but it would be from the 1.7. We had roughly 1.7 million proposed in the 2014 budget. We'd be asking you to increase that by 183,000.
Right, right. Would someone like to make that motion?
So moved.
Okay, is there a
Second.
second? You seconded? Did I
He
get?
made the motion.
a move in a second.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'd like to amend the motion.
Just a minute. Councilmember Christensen.
It's clear as mud. I mean, explain it again.
Okay.
We had an excess of $183,000.
We had a $183,000 increase in health insurance costs in the budget.
Yep.
We got notification that we have a zero increase, so we've got $183,000 to put somewhere. The recommendation is put it in capital, and then we'll figure out what we want to do, if it's these buildings or, you know, these other items.
Does that preclude it from going to street improvement?
No, it does
Not at
not.
all.
Not at all.
Because street improvement's under capital improvements. I mean, there's a
Correct.
line item for it,
Yep.
so it could be added to that. I mean, sure, I understand it now.
Okay. Councilmember Hammond.
I'd like to amend that motion to reduce that amount to $178,000 with the balance of $5,000 going to support the holidays parade downtown.
Okay.
I'll second it for some
okay.
more discussion, I guess.
Yeah.
It can be clarified here.
So the holidays parade costs $5,000, that's what we heard earlier?
Actually, $5,500,
So we're going to fund up to,
or $4,500, excuse me.
this is for 2014 now?
Yes.
Yep. Okay. Discussion? Yes, sir?
Are we having a float in it?
This is for 2014.
Yeah.
Do you want to lead the float committee?
No.
Put you on a lawnmower or snow blower. Councilmember Christensen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Refresh me of where the money came from otherwise. Was it from the float dollars that they collected for?
I
or
believe
where did
that
it
we
come
heard
from?
earlier that
Design center.
that money came from
Various
contributions.
business sponsors is I think what
Sponsors,
the Design
okay.
Center and less.
The Design Center funded most of it. It was not a profit-making event, but it was good for the community. Could I speak in favor of that, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
I think a lot of times we look at bricks and mortar and streets and lighting and curbs and gutter and the infrastructure, but to build a community, we have to have events. And I feel this is something that we could grow on. We have the Coffee Fest parade. We fund $25,000 each year, but it's more to build in the community than bricks and mortar. And I think this is a community function that we should support annually, and I hope it grows and grows and grows, so we have a plethora of people downtown at this event. And it's getting better. They've been working very hard at it, and I just think it's a good event for the public. And they come in from other areas, too. That's about all I have to say.
Would you do something about the weather for this week? Okay. We have a motion on the table. Wait a minute, was that an amendment?
I think it was an
Yes.
amendment,
That
and
was
I
an
do believe you
amendment.
had, I believe there was a second?
Yeah, we have,
Okay, I'm sorry, there's an amendment, the amendment wouldn't require a second.
the amendment is to take, instead of the full 183,000, we take 178,000 into capital, transfer $5,000 for the holidays parade. Councilmember Christensen.
I noticed that it's in the Design Center's budget, so they just gained $5,000 in their budget,
Yeah?
if the amendment passes.
Yep. Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
I'm sorry, there was not a second yet.
Yeah, we had,
Oh,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, you did say, you did. I'm
Yep,
sorry,
Ron
you
did.
missed that.
Yeah.
Okay, our apologies.
okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes. Now we need to pass the amended motion.
Which is essentially the same motion.
It's essentially the same motion that we just passed. So, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes. All right, I think pretty soon we have to come to a reconciliation here.
Mr. Chairman, it is reconciled with that action.
What about the overall budget with changes?
It is reconciled.
Our running tally shows that we have balance.
You basically reinstated everything that had been previously cut and made some temporary changes to the capital improvement program.
Okay.
So we will bring that back on December 2nd.
Yes, just, so now, this isn't going to go to Finance Committee. Like I said, this is just going to come to us on December 2nd. It won't change unless we change it after the truth and taxation hearing. So, yes.
Mr. Chairman, we would need two actions tonight as far as it going to the recommendation to the council. The recommendation to the council would actually take place after the public hearing on the budget. One would be to approve the tax levy, which would include the $170,000 for the HRA. Presently, the recommended tax levy is $3,992,734 for the general fund, with an additional $147,000 dedicated for street funding, for a grand total tax levy for the city of Willmar of $4,139,734. $734.
Okay.
And it would also include an additional $170,000 for the HRA. That would be the first resolution. The committee would have to take action on the
Okay.
second resolution. I can wait.
Can we get the first, let's just get the first one out of the way.
So moved.
There's a motion, is there a second?
Second.
Discussion on the levy. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes. We have a
Is there a
second
roll
one.
Resolution?
No?
No?
The motion is to introduce a resolution.
Yeah.
The second motion would be to introduce a resolution setting the general operating budget at $15,757,236.
That's what we did.
Make that.
Is there a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Second?
Second.
Okay, discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes. Okay, I just want to say thank you. I mean, this was well done. I feel bad that the mayor left, but I think we did what we had to do, and we'll move forward. So thank you again. Does
you,
anyone
Mr. Chair.
have any miscellany? Okay, I'd take a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
We're adjourned. Thank you.
Good job.